Well, let me just give you a hearty Central Coast Economic Forecast welcome. Thank you for being here. I am so grateful. You all are the reason. Still a lot of conversation happening over here. Don't you want to hear what I have to say? Gosh. Heather, is that you? Is that you chatting? You all are the reason that this community is so freaking special. And the fact that you are here today to invest in facts and data and become smarter so that you can make better decisions in business, in local government, running our schools, in the organizations that you lead and volunteer with, that makes me so happy. You are making an investment in our community by giving 3 hours today, and I am thrilled as a member of this community. So thank you for being here. And I know it's not easy. It's been a very full, some may say hectic, stressful, exhausting week. Starting with the World Series, that nail biter of a World Series. Yeah, a bunch of Dodgers fans in the house today. Beautiful. I personally don't have a dog in the hunt, but I was very nervous because I can remember back to 2018 when the Dodgers lost the World Series, and Chris Thornberg was very grumpy that year. So this year he's in a much better mood. I'm happy to report, and we're gonna have a great show. And then Tuesday we went right into the election. Prop 50 passed. Okay. I was wondering if there was going to be applause. I know that at least 70% of you voted for it, so the fact that there was just a smattering means that we're a little awkward about it. But it was nice to see democracy working. I mean, even if we were democratically voting to suppress democracy in response to someone else's democratic efforts to suppress democracy, I mean, all this voting has to be a good thing, right? I don't know how it ends, but to me, democracy is starting to feel a little bit like Elvis Presley. Some people say that he's dead, but there are thousands of sightings everywhere, so I'm still holding out hope that that's not true. Donnie won in New York. Do you guys see that? Yeah, some excitement around that. I was personally surprised that the global epicenter of capitalism elected a socialist, but I guess all the hedge fund managers are working remotely these days, so that kind of makes sense. Virginia, this is some positive news. Virginia elected their first female governor. I was thrilled about that. It seems fitting that a state named after a female leader should actually have one after 250 years. Better late than never. But nonetheless, thrilled. So here we are. We're feeling all the feels, a little awkwardness. Maybe some of you came here excited about the economy and the way things are going. Maybe some of you are feeling cautious and a little nervous. Maybe some of you are feeling anger this morning. Maybe it's about the election. Maybe you're a Blue Jays fan. Is that even possible in San Luis Obispo? Are there any Blue Jays fans? Okay, there's a couple. Go Canada. But maybe you're like me. You're just a little confused and just kind of interested to see how all of this plays out. Well, you know who's not confused? The experts that we have in store for you today. They're not confused. Folks, if you have never been to this event before, you probably don't realize this, but this is like the Super Bowl of economic forecasting events, okay? The Super Bowl, they got their chips and dip. We have charts and graphs for you today, okay? Yes, maybe people like to drink beer at the Super Bowl, but we drink our weight in Madonna in coffee here at the Economic Forecast. And of course, you get the cool commercials, maybe Matt Damon sells you some Bitcoin. We have heartfelt messages from our platinum sponsors by people you know and trust here. And I think lastly, the best comparison to maybe Bad Bunny performing at the halftime show would be the amazing entrepreneurs that we have presenting their business ideas to you with 3 minutes to win it. It's kind of the same thing, right? All we need, I think, for this event, maybe put some notes, consider this my feedback form, a good theme song. Or maybe we just adopt the Super Bowl theme song. If I could get some walk-on music, like da-da-da-da-da-da-da, then I think we would be set. Are you guys pumped? You hyped? Okay. Well, let's get to it. As you know, this event is led by an independent board of volunteers, of community leaders just like you, donating their time and their talent to put this event on, to bring you the facts and the data to make you more informed citizen. And leading that group, leading that board this year was Jocelyn Brennan as your board chair, the chief cat wrangler, they call her. Jocelyn is the president and CEO of HRM Consultants, where she specializes in land use and community engagement. She also serves as interim executive director of the Home Builders Association of Central Coast, and she represents our region with the California Association of Realtors. Please welcome Jocelyn Brennan.
Thanks, Ryan, and thank you all for being here. We have another sold-out event. Your presence here signals a shared commitment to the economic vitality and the future of our region. We're so fortunate to live in this place and work on the Central Coast, a region defined by its talented workforce, strong industry clusters, exceptional quality of life, what a beautiful day it is today, and remarkable spirit of collaboration. But, as we all know, we face complex challenges, from housing and infrastructure and workforce shortages and shifting markets. This is a unique year for our region, one marked both with uncertainty and opportunity, where the decisions we make in 2026 will help shape the Central Coast's future. Today, we will hear from experts who will help us understand those challenges and opportunities through data, so that together we can make informed, thoughtful decisions. This event isn't just about hearing from forecasts, it's about equipping each of us in business, in government, and across the community with the insights we need to plan wisely and look ahead with confidence. So before we dive into today's event, I want to say a few thank yous. As Ryan mentioned, it takes a year of hard work, dedication, and collaboration to bring the Central Coast Economic Forecast to life. So thank you to the leadership of our board of directors and to their dedication and time to this program. I'm honored to work along each side of them. And I want to say a special thank you to Stephanie Berteau, who pulls this all together seamlessly and makes it look easy. Thank you, Stephanie. The forecast was 100% reliant on sponsor dollars to make this event happen. This helps us provide our community with relevant and actionable data and analysis, the kind of insight that helps us all plan for a stronger future. So I want to say a special thank you to our media partners, Pacific Coast Business Times, New Times, and all the local chambers of commerce for getting the word out and supporting this event. We appreciate your partnership. We couldn't do this without our platinum sponsors, Amazon, Bank of America, Cal Poly, KSBY, Peregrine Hospitality, and PG&E. Each of these platinum sponsors has recorded a short greeting to share with you today. We sincerely thank Lisa Moore and Michael Macias, the Credible team at KSBY, for producing these pieces, which will run throughout today's program. So without further ado, we have a great program to get to, and we will start with a welcome from our sponsor, Bank of America.
Good morning. I'm Greg Bland, President of Bank of America's San Luis Obispo region. Thank you for joining us. At Bank of America, our commitment to responsible growth means delivering for our clients, supporting our employees, strengthening communities, and creating long-term value for our shareholders. We invest in the communities where we live and work to support economic development and vitality, because we know a strong economy creates opportunity for everyone. Here in San Luis Obispo, workforce development is a top priority. We're proud to partner with organizations like REACH and SLO Partners to expand access to livable wage jobs and provide training that prepares residents for those opportunities. Through our academy, we offer career readiness workshops, and we continue to invest in financial education for both students and community members, helping build a foundation for long-term success. We're proud to sponsor the Central Coast Economic Forecast, and we're looking forward to the insights it will bring.
Thank you, Bank of America, for your continued support of the forecast. It's much appreciated. And thank you, Jocelyn. You know, the board would like to take an extra moment and, where'd you go? Thank you for your chief cat wrangling this last year. So let's have another round of applause for Jocelyn. All right, before we get started, just a few housekeeping items, okay? You don't have to take notes. You don't have to try to redraw the charts and graphs you're going to see on the screen. The materials are going to be provided to you after the event. Give it a couple of days. You know, I get some emails, you know, the day of sometimes asking where the presentations are. They're coming. Just be patient. But in addition, the program is being recorded, and it does get posted, I believe, on YouTube, and we send that link out to you. So just be patient, but know that both the video and the program materials are coming to you. As a reminder, we do not take breaks at the Central Coast Economic Forecast, okay? We don't do timeouts like they do in the Super Bowl or commercial breaks, all right? So if you need to use the facilities or you need to stretch, just, you know, do your thing. You're an adult. Head on to the back. Feel free to, you know, stand back there and do calisthenics, whatever you need to do. Per usual, we are going to have an opportunity at the end to ask your questions to Dr. Chris Thornberg, Dr. Niree Kodaverdian, and you can submit those questions by emailing them to you at the email address on the screen. This email address is also on your program, and you can send a question anytime. You can send one right now. You know, why does Ryan look so weird? That's a valid question. Send it on through. We'll see if it gets answered. Lastly, again, this event is for you. We're trying to make you smarter, so we want to hear from you as to how we can improve. And that means you got to provide us feedback. We're going to send you an evaluation form after the event. Again, that's our ask to you today, that you would complete that and provide us with some feedback. All righty? That's all the housekeeping items I have for you. We are going to get started with our program now. We're going to start small, and then we're going to go big. We're going to take a look at the local economy first with Dr. Niree Kodaverdian. Niree is the research manager at Beacon Economics. She brings nearly 20 years of experience in studying regional economics, public policy, housing, and real estate markets across California. She is widely recognized for deep knowledge and sharp insights into California's economic landscape. Her work has been published in the Journal of Economic Behavior and Organization. She authors Beacon's their California Outlook report, so she's an expert on California. She's a trusted resource for businesses like yours, policymakers like you, and the media seeking insight into the state's economy. Today, we have her to give us an update on the Central Coast economy and what we can expect in the year ahead. Let's hear it for Dr. Niree Kodaverdian.
Thanks. Hello all, it is great to be here. Just to make a correction there, I don't have 20 years of experience, but I was a professor for 7 years, and I've been at Beacon Economics for the last 2 years as a research manager. So it is great to be here this morning in beautiful San Luis Obispo. And because it's my second year at this event, I can officially say it's not my first rodeo. So let's get started. Oh, here's my clicker. Okay, so a little bit about Beacon Economics before I dive into the data. Beacon is a boutique research firm. We're located in Los Angeles, and we've been around since 2006. And we go by the motto that the data should really determine the answer. So we are really data-driven. And we do a whole variety of economic reports and analysis, from forecasting to litigation support to impact and fiscal analysis to regional intelligence analysis. And we've worked with San Luis Obispo partners for over a decade now. So here are a sample of some of our reports that we've done over the years. We have revenue forecasts, growth forecasts for San Luis Obispo County, again, revenue forecast for the city of San Luis Obispo. We did a study on short-term vacation rentals here. We did a recent study on the economic, fiscal, and social impact of tourism for the city of Paso. We had a wine industry impact report we recently did. Also, a sales tax forecast we recently did, and we've also done employment report cards. So we have a lot of experience in the region. Also this one, the impact of Highway 1 closure near Big Sur. Okay, so to start off, I'll talk about the macroeconomic indicators and what they tell us about the local economy. After that, we'll go into key industries: wine, tourism, healthcare, and energy. After that, we'll talk about housing a little bit, then federal policy impacts, what the immigration policies and tariff policies have meant for the local economy, and then we'll wrap it up with some concluding remarks and some actionable recommendations for you guys. So let's get started with the macroeconomic indicators. Real output remains stable. There hasn't been as much growth as some other counties in San Luis Obispo relative to these other counties over the last decade, but real output does remain stable over the last few years. Again, this is real, which means inflation adjusted, so nominal output has been rising. Tax receipts have actually been a lot higher post-pandemic. You guys can see that significant jump after the pandemic. So they might feel lower in the last few years, and that's because they haven't been growing the way they jumped post-pandemic with all of that stimulus money, the COVID stimulus money that was injected in the economy that essentially stimulated this jump. So, but we are a lot higher than if the pre-pandemic trend had continued. So you guys can see the dotted line that's showing you where tax receipts would have been had there not been that significant jump. And yet, I saw this article by the SF Gate, which is talking about how the San Luis Obispo downtown is in a heartbreaking condition, which is really just ridiculous. You guys just saw what has happened to tax receipts. Oh, and that's not, okay, there we go. So there has been broad recovery across a lot of different types of categories for taxable sales, although in the last year, a lot of the growth has been in business, B2B, and construction rather than consumer-facing categories. In terms of employment, there has not been as much recovery here, but that's not an anomaly to San Luis Obispo. You could see that also in Santa Barbara, there hasn't been a recovery to pre-pandemic levels of employment, but it is stable. So employment is not falling, but it's also not where it was pre-pandemic, and it hasn't gone back to pre-pandemic trend, which again, the dotted line is showing you where the county would have been had it continued where it was going pre-pandemic. But even though employment is not rising, the labor force is slowly growing. So the labor force consists of your employed plus unemployed. So what this is telling us is that people are trying to find jobs. There are more people entering the labor force. They're looking for jobs. So that is positive. And that's exactly what we're going to see. So when you take flat employment plus growing labor force, you do see that the unemployment rate is going up. So there has been a slight increase in the unemployment rate here. But again, that's not an anomaly to San Luis Obispo. That's been happening in California generally, as it has in some other counties around here. And when you take a historical perspective, which you can see all the way on the right, this is not a high unemployment by any means, any stretch of the imagination. It is higher than where we were when the labor market was really hot coming out of the pandemic, but we're not at a scary or concerning type of labor market. In terms of labor demand, that has been softening, though it is higher, it is stronger than it was pre-pandemic, and it is uneven. So labor demand is very strong in healthcare, for example. And we spoke to Ryan Ashlock from Adventist Health, who confirmed the strength of labor demand in healthcare, not just for nurses, but there's apparently a shortage for entry-level workers as well. And he mentioned how Cuesta College has a new PA program, which was also confirmed when we spoke with Dr. Jill Stearns from Cuesta College. She is the president of Cuesta College, and she spoke to us about how the college has been expanding their RN program to help meet local hospital needs, and how they're generally updating their training programs. There's also a lot of labor demand and labor shortage, in fact, in advanced manufacturing. So I don't know if you guys heard about this new Department of Defense contract that was awarded to Trust Automation. So congratulations to Trust. So the contract required a lot more engineers and advanced techs, and since January, Trust has hired roughly 500 of these types of workers. For the employed, things are looking really good in San Luis Obispo. Weekly wages have been rising, so there you could see San Luis Obispo, which, by the way, I've tried to keep it the same color throughout all the slides, so you can easily see San Luis Obispo is generally going to be dark blue. So San Luis Obispo wages have been rising, as they have in Salinas and Santa Barbara and a lot of these other counties and in California overall. Since the pandemic, San Luis Obispo has seen over 30% growth, whereas California has seen about 14%. So a lot more growth in weekly wages in the county here. Households are generally getting richer. So all the way on the left, I have a graph showing you the share of households earning less than 50K and those earning more than 100K. And as you could see, those that are earning less than 50K has been decreasing over the last decade, and those earning more than 100K has been increasing. So households are doing better off financially. Median household income has been going up as well. So here we're looking at just the median, comparing it to some other counties, very comparable levels of growth in median income. When we compare it to California as well, we see that there's been almost the same amount of growth in median income. And households are not getting poorer. So it's not just that the top quartile is driving this up. When we're looking at poverty rates, you could see that there's been a drop since 2012 in San Luis Obispo, and more recently, poverty rates have been stable. Income inequality has also not really budged for the last 8 years or so. Another sign of growing wealth is growing share of homeownership. And as you could see, compared to California, the county has had a growing share of homeownership. So California has not changed. It's gone from like 46% to 45% renters, whereas for San Luis Obispo, they've gone from 45% renters to 37% renters. So that's a great sign. People are moving into home ownership, and so it's natural to see that apartment vacancies are slightly going up. But despite the fact that vacancies have gone up, asking rents have continued to rise in the county. And yet another sign of people doing better off financially is spreading out, which I've talked about previously, and Chris is also going to talk about. So when people are able to live by themselves, when they're able to not have roommates, to not have to live with family, They do. So the fact that we're seeing household sizes shrinking means that wealth and financial, how people are doing financially is improving. Although there has been more stability here, both in California and in the county over the last couple of years. Okay, so that's the macro picture. We saw what's been going on with GDP. It's stable. Employment has not fully recovered. Unemployment is slightly going up. We have uneven labor demand, and households are doing better financially. So now let's go into key industries in the county. We'll look at wine, tourism, healthcare, and energy, and not necessarily in that order, because I talk about healthcare first, I believe. So I showed this last year. This is the share of real GDP by industry. And I'm actually going to overlay last year's graph so you guys can see how this has changed over the last year, which is not by much. There has been a little bit more growth in financial activities, which includes insurance, real estate, rental, and leasing, and a little bit of a drop in utilities, but overall very similar picture to last year. So the two key industries here in terms of GDP are finance and utilities. And obviously the utilities is Diablo. Agriculture, though it is prominent perception-wise, it actually makes up about 2% of the GDP in the economy. But of course, tourism is very much related to the wine industry and to agriculture, so we do also have to keep that in mind, and that's a little bit higher at 5%. So, I guess I talk about utilities first. So Diablo Canyon just cleared a major step, which we learned when we talked to Thomas Jones of Diablo. And actually, I don't know how that turned out. There was a vote yesterday. So it looks like there are steps towards extending the operational period of Diablo, which is going to be great for the economy. It's the number 2 contributor of GDP here. So that would be great. There is a high cost of uncertainty, not knowing if Diablo is going to close or remain open. And we need clean energy, which nuclear energy is a part of. So California has really ambitious goals for emissions. We have met the 2020 goals, but as you could see, we're not really on track to meeting the 2030 and 2045 goals. So taking something like Diablo offline is a move in the wrong direction. We do need more clean energy to meet these emissions goals. In terms of jobs, very similar in SLO as to California, a little bit more in SLO in education, healthcare, and social services, a little bit less in professional, scientific, and management. Compared to the US, leisure and hospitality has the highest location quotient here. So there's a comparative advantage compared to the nation overall in leisure and hospitality, which is, I think, something we would expect. When we look at education and health services specifically, you can see how labor has really grown here over the last decade. So the blue line is showing you all other industries, and the green is just healthcare and education. And you can see how healthcare and education has significantly grown compared to everything else. So 16% versus 8% growth. In terms of winery employment, there has been a lot of increase after the pandemic, so about 14%. Although the last year has not been great for the county. There's been a drop of about 5%. But as you could see, these are some other counties around here. There's been a drop in a lot of counties. So this is not a unique problem for San Luis Obispo. It doesn't seem like 2024 was a great wine year. There was a 40% drop in wine grapes in 2024 for San Luis Obispo. But here's my one joke, I think. Let us remain optimistic, because lettuce heads and lettuce leaves have had a lot of growth over the last year. And in case that joke was going to fail, I had another one, which was that fell flat like a wilted leaf, but I think you guys laughed, so. Okay, so 2024 wasn't great for crops generally, not just wine grapes, but also for crops generally in San Luis Obispo. So the left graph is showing you what's going on with crops overall. But obviously for wine grapes specifically, it was also not great. But we have to take a longer term perspective. There are years with declines when you're looking at wine grape production and SLO, but overall there is a significant rise in the long run. So we have to keep that in mind. There's just volatility in the industry, which is something expected in agriculture. It wasn't a great wine year generally for California. So this is total wine grape crush for California. But despite that, prices have continued to rise, which is also true for San Luis Obispo. Wine grape prices have continued to rise. Pinot Noir is just doing its own thing. It was a lot higher before, and it's now come more in line with other prices. But Syrah was also the most expensive last year. It remains the most expensive this year. So we talked to Joel Peterson from Paso, and he reminded us that this is a wonderful time for wine because we're in the fall and this is harvest season, so there's a lot of wine magic in the air. So I'm especially grateful to be here during this time. And speaking of Paso, we recently did, which I alluded to earlier, we did a study on the impact of the wine industry. And this is just a screenshot of our executive summary. Here are some of our key findings. The total economic output of the Paso Robles Wine Alliance was $2.8 billion, and that shows you the breakdown by region. Employment, the wine industry supports almost 9,000 jobs in the region, which is 1 in every 5 jobs. And a lot of labor income is generated by the wine industry. So this is from both direct, indirect, and induced effects. It's not all directly from like wine employment. It could be down the line. Okay, so very much related with the wine industry is the tourism industry. So now we're looking at hotel occupancies, and we'll look at RevPAR. Hotel occupancy rates are mostly recovered, I would say, and they're stable. They're especially doing well for the higher end type hotels, luxury and upper scale and upscale and upper mid-scale. And this is despite the fact that we've had this Highway 1 closure, which has made it very difficult, not just for residents to commute, but also for visitors to come to the region. But that's improving. Caltrans has been putting up signage, so that should be positive there. But again, despite the fact that we have this closure, RevPAR for hotels has been going up. So this is indexed restaurant and hotel tax receipts. That's gone up significantly since the pre-pandemic period, and especially for the upper scale or the upper upscale hotels, RevPAR is doing especially well. Okay, so now going on to housing. So the first question here is, has affordability been going down? Well, I think we already kind of know the answer to that because we saw what's been happening to home ownership rates. And we see that in this data as well. Median owner cost as a percent of income has been going down. So the lines going down here means that affordability is going up. Affordability has not been changing much for renters, but for homeowners, it's been increasing. The real estate market is admittedly cooler when we're looking at prices. Prices have been recently going down a little bit, but this is not unique to San Luis Obispo. This is generally true for the real estate market. Sales are significantly lower than where they were pre-pandemic. and inventories have recently been going up. We talked to Aaron Abbott from Abbott Reed, and he confirmed how this is a consequence of the higher interest rate environment that we find ourselves in. And the CEQA reforms are a positive step in the right direction, but they might take some time to, it might take some time to see the effects. And he talked about how they're okay on that lag this time, and they're focusing more on affordable housing. In terms of residential permits, the county has not really changed its permitting levels over the last 10 years. It's been doing better than some other counties, but not much change over the last 10 years for the county itself. Though it is doing well on the ADU front, and this is something that's true for California as a whole. ADUs seem to be the saving grace. We're not seeing much change in permitting, but we are seeing a lot of development in ADUs. But the fact that we're not permitting more single-family and multifamily developments, combined with higher incomes and people spreading out as a result of higher incomes, essentially means that there isn't room for population to grow because less people are taking up more homes. So here is the number of people per household in San Luis Obispo County. You can see how that's been dropping off significantly, especially after the pandemic. And the population is back to 2015 levels, and it's flat. We're not seeing growth really since then. And let me just go back here. I highlighted some of these other counties because they have had growth in their population. So Fresno has had 7% growth over the last 10 years, San Joaquin 11.3%, Tulare, Merced, versus San Luis Obispo, which has had a 0.1 decline in their population over the last 10 years. So I highlighted them because I want you to see how important population is for labor force. I mean, it seems intuitive and it's just common sense, right, that we need population growth for labor force growth, but I wanted you to actually see it, which is what I have here. This is labor force growth for San Luis Obispo and these other counties that I highlighted that have had population growth. So what you're seeing is that while San Luis Obispo has had a decline in their labor force over the last 10 years, all of these other counties have had increases. So we really need to focus on population, and for population, we need permits. We spoke to Matt Pontes, CEO of SLO County, and he told us how they're ready to pilot real collaborative workforce housing solutions, which is really great news for the county. That's exactly what you guys need. Kathy Cartier, sorry, also spoke to us about workforce housing and how important that is, and how this is not a one-for-one swap with vacation rentals. So we can't expect to prevent vacation rentals and that to then increase workforce housing. These are not one-to-one units. So we have population not growing, and at the same time, population is aging. The median age has gone up from 39 to 41. It was already higher than California to begin with, but it continues to go up, so now it's even higher. So for that, we need to think about solutions so that our older folks, our retired folks, can perhaps move into other units, maybe retirement communities, to open up their homes to allow for the natural filtering process to happen, to allow new families to move into their existing homes. There was a big retirement development that was online, but or in the process of getting approved, but that got dropped. I don't know if you guys heard about it. Villaggio But there are some other ones that are coming online, so that's great. And here's a list actually of what's in the pipeline for retirement housing. So there are steps in the right direction. Okay, and for the last part here, the federal policy impacts, immigration and tariffs. So let's talk about immigration first. The Hispanic share in SLO County has been rising. It's at 26% now. It has been rising much more quickly here than it has in California overall. But California's Hispanic population share is still higher. This is just showing you what's been happening to the growth. So the ICE raids did impact SLO. I found some recent articles about how there were ICE raids here. But we did an analysis of foot traffic data and sales tax receipts for the fashion district in Los Angeles, which was kind of the core of where the ICE raids were happening. And that part has actually recovered since the ICE raids. So it's bounced back to pre-ICE raid foot traffic. So I would expect the same to be true for San Luis Obispo. As far as tariffs, though they are higher than where they were, they're actually still historically quite low. They're at about 14-15% effective rate right now. And the effect on the wine industry is a little multi-pronged. There is the impact on imported parts, because as we spoke to Joel Peterson, who informed us, there's a lot of imported parts that go into the wines that are manufactured in SLO. The barrels, the corks, the bottles. So there's that aspect of it. Then there are wines that the county imports and distributes. And then we have wine exports, of course. So retaliatory tariffs are theoretically going to impact those exports. And the type of price effect does depend on what we're looking at: white wine versus red wine, premium versus low tier, purchase location, bottled versus bulk. So there's been analysis done on that, and the relative sensitivities of these different types of wines have been analyzed. But when we look at the actual price changes pre and post tariff, there isn't much impact on wine. So I've only selected a few subcategories here. There was like a list of 100 or more. And I've selected these so you can see relatively where wine is, how high the impact on some other products are, how low they are on some. So carpets and other floor coverings, for example, they've seen a 50% rise in prices post-tariff. Whether that's because of tariffs or not, it's not super clear, but there's been a 50% rise after the tariffs. Let me go back. Information processing equipment has seen a 13% drop. Wine has seen a 1.44% increase. So this is not concerning. This is not going to have a major impact. It's not really that big. What about California wine imports and exports? So like not just looking at the prices, what's actually going on with the trade of wine? Wine imports have really been unaffected. Actually, they're slightly higher than where they were before, 2025 year to date compared to 2024 year to date. What about exports? Well, exports look like they've been going down, so that could be a negative consequence of the tariffs, perhaps. But when we actually look at the longer horizon, we see that there has been a downward trend in wine exports from California. So again, not super clear if tariffs have had an impact. Okay, so to wrap up, some actionable recommendations for the county. It's very important to expand housing. As we saw, housing means population, population means labor force. And we need more labor force to allow for the economy to continue growing. Modernize mobility and regional connectivity. So it's important to think about transportation and not just this one closure, but generally transportation is not as easy here, both for residents and visitors. So having a little more focus on transportation solutions is going to be crucial. Invest in local economic strengths, which is already happening, but continue to nurture and grow the industries that you see there is a comparative advantage in. That's going to be an easy way forward. Support aging. So think about retirement communities. And that's not only going to be beneficial for the people that are going to be moving in, but also it's going to open up housing and allow people to move into their existing homes. And foster talent retention and workforce development. So continue working with Cuesta College and other universities around here to strengthen the connection between education and employment through apprenticeships and other types of training programs. So with that said, thank you very much. And here are some of my sources, and this is the QR code as Ryan promised, so if you'd like a copy of my slides, you can take a picture of that, and you should get that. Thank you.
Nice job. Amazing. Thank you so much, Niree. It was fantastic. I am looking forward to spending some more time with that data. Well, next up, we have Blake Bradley representing REACH for us today. But before we get to him, we have another message from our sponsors. Take a look.
Hello, everyone. I'm Paula Gerfin, Chief Nuclear Officer and Senior Vice President at Diablo Canyon Power Plant. At Diablo, we're proud of the role we play in providing 4 million Californians with clean, reliable electricity every day. As the state's largest source of clean energy, we generate nearly 20% of California's emissions-free electricity. As California continues its transition to a 100% greenhouse gas-free electric grid, the California Energy Commission forecasts that by 2040, peak electrical demand will grow by 20 gigawatts. That represents more than 9 Diablo Canyons for perspective. This means that we need a portfolio of all clean energy resources to ensure grid stability while helping the state meet its aggressive climate goals. And while we serve all of California, we are proud to operate right here on the Central Coast and excited about the economic benefits PG&E will continue to contribute to our local communities. Thank you, Central Coast, for your support as we extend safe operations of California's remaining operating nuclear power plant.
We love our folks at PG&E, and we are very grateful for their sponsorship. I am curious to hear about that vote yesterday. Does anyone want to give me like a thumbs up or thumbs down? We're from the PG&E table. How did that go? Thumbs down. Oh, it's a continuance. Okay, all right. It's a continuance. So that means stay tuned. All right, well, let's see. Blake Bradley. Blake is here to us today to actually share how some of the data that you just saw from Niree is making its way into local businesses, boots on the ground, share some stories as to how this is actually playing out, to bring perspective to life. Blake has a day job launching rockets down in Vandenberg, but today he represents REACH as a board member, as the chair of the REACH Council. He plays a pivotal role in uniting business and community leaders to guide strategy, foster collaboration, and drive REACH's goals. Which are namely jobs, people, and housing initiatives, which are powering the REACH 2030 plan and shaping the long-term vision for our region. He's a passionate advocate, you're going to see that in just a moment, for economic development across the Central Coast, committed to building economies that foster a sense of community and create lasting opportunity. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Blake Bradley. There he is.
Well, good morning, everybody. First, before I get started, I just want to sort of feel out everybody in the room. So where are my government people? Okay. All right, everyone's kind of hiding in the back. That's interesting. Where's my education partners? More in the front. Okay, good students. That makes sense. Business leaders? Okay. Students? Are there any students in the room? Good, a few students, great. And then any community leaders in the room? That's all of you. Yeah, okay, all right, good. Well, thank you all for having me today. You know, we've heard a lot of great data here, and I want to just add a few facts that are really exciting and really interesting for what we have going on here in the county. So, first and foremost, Diablo Canyon, which of course is a huge opportunity as we just heard, is the first nuclear plant in the country to use AI to boost safety and efficiency with tech that was born right here in SLO from a startup that's now teaming up with the National Lab. It's a big deal. Yeah, absolutely. Of course, our premier university, Cal Poly, was the first in the nation to send a student-built experimental spacecraft up into the skies aboard a Dann Aerospace reusable space plane, which is pretty amazing for the students there. Yes. And then near and dear to my heart, of course, the Vandenberg Space Force Base is on track to be the busiest spaceport in the world, globally, by next year, based on the current projections going into 2026. And that's a really big deal. So we're going to talk a lot about that here today. We're really excited about that. Okay, excellent. So to introduce myself, my name is Blake Bradley. I am the chair of the Reach Council, proud resident of Lompoc. Any Lompokians? All right, we'll try that again maybe later. And as mentioned, in my free time, I do launch rockets at Vandenberg, which is you know, out of this world, as they say. You know, you're gonna hear me talk a lot today in general, but you're gonna hear me talk a lot today about we or us. And I want to be clear before I start that this is not the royal we. This is what I call the you we. Each of you in this room are the economic drivers of change in this area. When I talk about the we and the us that are out there doing this work, it's not we Reach or we the chamber, we whatever it is. It's each and every one of you doing what you do in your day jobs, in your volunteer hours, in your free time to make this county so great. So just remember that as we go through this today, and you know, thankful for all you guys do for this community. So I'm really proud to be here representing the organization known as REACH today. For those of you that aren't familiar with REACH, we are a regional economic action coalition connecting businesses, education, and government to turn good ideas and big potential into real progress for our communities. For me personally, I joined the REACH board a number of years ago now, representing, of course, SpaceX as an organization, but also our communities here, which is so important in the Central Coast. I joined with the reminder that this region's potential is extraordinary, which we saw the data that's going to be propelling quite a bit of that. And as a business leader, I saw that there's a number of challenges, but really a lot of opportunities to build something lasting here on the Central Coast, which is why I think we all do what we do. As the REACH Council, which is the council that I chair for REACH, it's a group of 70+ SLO and Santa Barbara-based community leaders like yourselves who have a shared belief that we can drive unprecedented regional collaboration to shape a stronger Central Coast economy when people at home can build their lives and livelihoods right here in our Central Coast community. It's great to see many of my fellow council members here today, and I look forward to working with all of you to bring even more of you into this vital work in the years ahead. REACH launched in 2020 with a strong conviction that our economy could work better for all of our people, and that meant creating more opportunities for our neighbors, our kids, and our future generations to gain skills, good-paying jobs, and a place where we can afford to live and play. Earlier this year, we released our REACH 2030 and Beyond plan. This is the follow-on to our original action plan that some of you may be familiar with, sharpening our focus on the three key things that matter most to every single community and business in this region: jobs, people, and housing. We need to expand good-paying jobs, equipping our people with the education and skills to access meaningful careers right here in our community, and of course, enabling housing for all these folks to live. Here today, just to build a little bit on the picture that Niree shared with us, is just showing what's really driving all of this work and this growth on the ground, the story behind the data of what's already taking place in our communities and how together, we are working to shape what comes next for our communities, to shine a light on the bright spots across these three fronts where business, government, education, and civic organizations are leaning in and shaping the future that we want for our region. Because we all have a choice. We can be passive observers and subjects to our economy, or we can be active builders of it. And I think that all of you in this room would agree that this hard work that we're all doing is working. And I want to talk a little bit about that today. It's been a banner year for investment and momentum across all three pillars of jobs, people, housing in this region, because all of us have stayed focused on identifying our strengths, aligning our efforts, and moving forward together. Let's get started with jobs. You heard Niree say that our region needs to diversify our industry base, and that's exactly what REACH's Jobs Initiative is working to do. We're working to accelerate growth in fast-growing global industries that already have a strong foothold right here in the Central Coast. Launching space and aerospace innovation, fueling climate and energy research, and powering the future of high tech. Alongside spurring entrepreneurship and business expansion that ensures these industries remain engines of good jobs and long-term economic growth for our communities. Here I have it's coming, a beautiful pie chart which shows that tourism, agriculture, healthcare, and other local serving industries remain mainstays of our regional economy. Vital to our community. Oh, it's coming. Surely it is. I don't know what's going on with the visuals, but they'll come eventually, hopefully. Vital to our community and to our quality of life. But the innovation industries that reach 2030 and beyond are key to diversifying the economy and importing new wealth into this region in addition to those mainstay industries that we see. They represent our greatest opportunity to create new, good-paying jobs, many accessible without a four-year degree. And they align directly with state, national, and global priorities, from space and air mobility to clean energy and microelectronics, giving the Central Coast a real competitive advantage. This chart is a really cool chart, actually, when it loads. Let me see if I can get it to work with me here. AV folks, do we have the slides by chance? Because this is important. If not, I can paint a picture of what it looks like, maybe, visually. Okay, well, the chart that if you can envision, there on the last slide here, this one, where that yellow box is, it shows a comparison of all of the major regions identified in the state of California, and it's very interesting to note that in state research, that the Central Coast was identified as only one of two regions in the entire state of California that has all 5 sectors designated for acceleration in the state's economic blueprint. And those are the priority industries that you see listed here on the left. So that is ag tech, life sciences, microelectronics, space and satellites, and precision manufacturing. The Central Coast is one of 2 regions in the entire state that has all 5 of those industries growing here in our region, which is a really big deal. And this visual does a great job of showing it when it works. The bottom line here is that this area has a competitive advantage for growing and attracting both public and private investment in these key industries, and it's already happening on a massive scale. So let's take a look at what that looks like in space and aerospace, which is an area where we are capturing both national and global attention for that work. On this slide, you would see beautiful visuals of the news article headlines that show all of the investment that's coming to our region. And a number of those I'll highlight here, and you can envision them on the screen if you, it's vision casting. Almost $1.5 billion regional industry with 7,000 jobs and growing fast. At Vandenberg alone, launch activity has increased tenfold since 2020 and is on track to be the busiest spaceport in the world next year, as I noted earlier. The largest launch provider at Vandenberg actually just broke their own record this week by launching a rocket back-to-back in less than 60 hours, 60, from launch to launch, which is an incredible feat, and then being able to rapidly and reliably reuse that orbital class vehicle, which is a really big deal. We have a record number of launches, and we've already surpassed last year's total out of here in Vandenberg, and we're going to keep doing that over and over again over the next few years. So that's a big piece of growth for the region. It's great. Yeah, round of applause for that. I like it. This isn't just attracting, the private industry attention, but it's also attracting both federal and state dollars. So the federal government has now committed over $800 million towards major infrastructure investments at Vandenberg, on top of an $80 million investment, which was recently awarded to expand satellite processing capabilities at Vandenberg, which REACH had a big hand in. Space launch providers themselves are also investing hundreds of million dollars directly into the infrastructure at Vandenberg and hiring hundreds, if not thousands, of people in our local communities. But these investments don't just stop at the gates of Vandenberg. They're spurring job growth really across the entire region. At SLO-based companies like Precision Construction and other industry partners here like Stellar Exploration and Maverick Space Systems, which are local companies that are building propulsion systems and components that make these launches possible and often hitch a ride on SpaceX rockets coming out of Vandenberg, which is really great. And there's, of course, a lot of great testing missions going on up at the Paso Airport as well, and other areas across the region. Woo! Paso! In the house! Just recently, Reach also announced that we have been awarded $9.5 million for Space Vandenberg, which is an expansive initiative with a coalition of public and private partners to position the Central Coast as the nation's leading hub for space innovation, launch, and workforce development. And these aren't just abstract wins. I mean, it's a lot of words, it's a lot of money, and a lot of headlines that you can't see. But these headlines translate directly into new jobs for our community members, expanded facilities for growth in our neighborhoods and communities, and pathways for local students and workers to participate in a rapidly growing industry right here at home. The space economy is no longer this distant concept that happens light years away. It's becoming one of our region's most tangible engines of growth, and there's a long way to go. On the next slide, perhaps. Yes. I don't think that's the one. I'll keep talking while the folks work that out in the back. The growth is not just all space, and it's not all Vandenberg. When you look at air mobility, drones, and precision manufacturing, you're looking at more than $2.5 billion of regional economy with over 10,000 jobs. Actually makes the space industry look small when you look at that. And some of the highest wages in our region. And again, this momentum is continuing to build. Just a few examples to share with you. Inspired Flight, which is a San Luis Obispo grown drone manufacturer, just secured $12 million in venture funding to scale their production and expand their footprint. Is Inspired Flight in the room? Okay, well, congratulations to them if they are. Trick Robotics, oh, there it is. Hold on. I don't have clicker control, but we have visuals, so that's a good start. Oh, I got a new clicker. Oh. There's that chart. Huh? Right? It's as good as I said. It's as good as I said. Thank you, AV team. Yeah, that's as good as I said, right? That's a heck of a chart. Okay, and there's those beautiful headlines I told you about. Yeah, that's pretty cool. And I love this one here on the left, Launch Fever. I'm bringing that back to the office, Launch Fever. I love it. And then, okay, where were we? Drones. We were talking about drones and robotics and precision manufacturing. So this continues to be a huge focus for the industry. A company called Trick Robotics, which you may be familiar with, is born out of Cal Poly CIE Hot House, which is really cool. Hot House people are in the house. Where are you? Yeah? Okay, great. And, they have these robotic tractors that are pretty interesting, and it reduces pesticide use in agriculture, which is a win for all of us who are eating that ag. And it's a great example of where innovation in this area is able to meet both the agricultural needs while also increasing health outcomes for our community. And then, of course, companies like Trust Automation, Mantis Composites, and ES Aero, which we heard about earlier, are expanding their operations right here in the Central Coast, collectively adding hundreds of good-paying jobs, and again, many that don't require four-year degrees. Together, these companies illustrate what's possible when we align all of our strengths in this region in manufacturing, engineering, and innovation, fueling the growth of industries that are both globally competitive, but also locally rooted. This is what diversification looks like in action. A regional economy that's broadening its base, deepening its talent pipeline, and most importantly, creating new opportunity across every community that we live and work in. Yep. Moving into energy. In energy, our region continues to play a defining role for both local and state economy. Diablo Canyon, as you may have heard, is now officially in extended operations, which is good news. Continuation is still going there, but they are continuing right now in extended operations. We're retaining several of those thousands of good-paying jobs in this region and keeping SLO County at the forefront of clean, reliable energy production in California. And outside of Diablo Canyon, there's more innovation happening as well, which you can now see on the screen. The inventor of the LED is now powering laser-based fusion technologies right here on the Central Coast and just won a highly competitive Department of Energy award that is pushing the boundaries of what's possible for next-generation clean energy right here on the Central Coast. Fission today, fusion tomorrow, which is slightly above my pay grade. But that's what the director of the National Laboratory at Lawrence Livermore said, which made history in 2022 with the first fusion ignition. She underscored this at the recent California Economic Summit last month, that nuclear energy remains one of the safest, cleanest, and most reliable sources of baseload power for our national grid, and with fission as the bridge to an even cleaner fusion future. Again, above my pay grade, but it sounds important. Atomic Canyon, which is a slow startup inspired by Diablo Canyon, just raised recently another $7 million and is working to set a national standard for AI in the nuclear industry, which is very important. The Cal Poly Pier earlier this year earned a federal designation as a wave energy testing site, another great tidal energy investment, and also the DOE's first open water research pier right here in the county, which is great. Across the region, we're continuing important dialogue around the Central Coast's role in offshore wind, solar, energy storage, and other renewables, leveraging our natural assets and technical expertise to build more resilience and sustainable energy future for our communities. From nuclear to renewables to emerging fusion and AI applications, the Central Coast is becoming a living laboratory for clean energy innovation, where innovation meets implementation. It's very exciting. Next, let's talk about our people. People and workforce. So we got a lot of jobs coming. That's the big takeaway here, and they're already here. And so we, again, going back to the we, are making real strides to ensure that local residents can actually access these jobs. Across the Central Coast, we're seeing powerful partnerships between our education partners and industry partners that are creating clear, hands-on pathways into growing fields. Some headlines here from our partners at Cuesta College, who are working with ACI Jet and SLO to train the next generation of aerospace technicians, not only to meet the aerospace need and the airline need, but also for rockets and precision manufacturing, which is coming out of that group. ES Aero is sponsoring boot camps through SLO partners. The SLO Airport and the Lucia Mar School District are launching aviation education programs at AG High School. Trust Automation is backing a new advanced manufacturing program with SLO Coastal Schools. And Cal Poly's CIE Hot House has a beautiful new downtown office space. If you haven't seen it yet, it's pretty epic. They've been posting on social media. I'm very excited about it. And that's where our next generation of entrepreneurs and moving ideas from the drawing board to the marketplace is happening right in downtown SLO, which is pretty epic. I see a few folks from that program here in the front row. Woo! These are the kind of programs, folks, that will root down jobs in this area and create lasting opportunity for the people of our region, and several of these are being supported through REACH's Uplift Central Coast and California Jobs First initiative, which I'd like to share a little bit with you about. To the list of banner investments in the region, we have to include the full Uplift Coalition, which is the right one on the screen here. This is our 6th county project under California Jobs that has brought more than $20 million in California state funding to the region. A major milestone this year was being able to directly fund $9 million of community-driven projects that strengthen economic mobility across the Central Coast. And right here in SLO County, that includes almost $4 million across 16 projects, such as a Cuesta and Allen Hancock collaboration, which allows traditionally underserved communities to have high-tech training and degree programs right where those students are. Advancing plans for a permanent facility for Cuesta's aviation and technician training program that I mentioned earlier with ACI Jet. Expanding skilled trade apprenticeship programs in regional K-12 skills laboratories, as well as a wraparound support program like a region-wide childcare coalition led by First 5 SLO County. And these projects are already underway, by the way. So this money is moving, these projects are happening, and they're having a lot of opportunity for the people who call this region home. All right, folks, now I'm going to say the H word, the one that we all know and love, housing. This is, of course, nothing happens without a place to live, and it's super important that we are focusing in this area, and I think everybody knows that this has been a big talking point for a while, but here at REACH, our goal is to make it from a talking point to actually a point of action. So this has been, of course, receiving state and local and, of course, federal attention as well. At the recent California Economic Summit earlier this month, Governor Gavin Newsom put it bluntly. It's an issue that defines more things in more ways on more days for the entire state. Period, full stop. And he's right. You heard Dr. Niree say it earlier. A shortage of multi-family housing remains one of the biggest barriers to economic growth in our Central Coast. It affects everything that we've talked about today. Our ability to attract and, of course, more importantly, retain good talent, grow our industries, and create opportunities for people who want to live, work, and build a life here in the Central Coast. It's not the first time that housing's been talked about on the stage, and I certainly hope it won't be the last. But the good news is that real progress is happening, and it's happening fast. Oh, go back. Go back. This thing's out of control. All right. New infill housing projects are rising across the county with even more in the pipeline. We had a big, exciting one last night for the Dana Reserve earlier this week. Congratulations to Dana Reserve. Yes. And there's several more in the pipeline, so I want to give a shout out to all the housing developers that are working hard on this. It's a big risk to go and do these sort of projects. It takes a lot of years, a lot of brain damage to go through this. I want to also shout out our community leaders and our government partners who are helping to streamline a lot of these policies and projects through the pipeline and making it easier to build the housing that we need right here in the Central Coast. So you can see some local examples of things that are happening, but there's even more, actually. I have some more to tell you about. So the SLO County Board of Supervisors unanimously approved measures to accelerate multifamily and affordable housing development, which was the result of months of collaboration between REACH and all of the regional housing stakeholders that are in the room here. Those policy changes update the county's baseline for multifamily development, a suite of incentives that make a continuum of housing options more feasible to produce, decreasing some of the burden on the business partners and developers who are choosing to go down these pathways, providing local funds that the county can use right away to leverage state and federal housing resources that are available, and then building on the regional housing framework that was adopted in 2023 to help unlock these opportunities for both developers and for our community. And these reforms have helped earn the state's pro-housing designation for the county, which is another really great accomplishment for SLO County. Where I live in Lompoc, there's some exciting things going on as well. Lompoc School District is really serving as a leader and looking towards using surplus land for workforce housing. This was a REACH-supported effort that could become a model for how schools and school districts across the state can utilize their surplus land in order to build out housing developments to support housing, affordable housing for teachers and members of districts. So that's a really big deal. It's in quite literally my backyard. I can see it from my back porch, which is exciting. Our analysis through REACH and some of our partners have identified that there's over 540 acres of potentially developable, that's a heck of a word, developable acres across 65 sites in SLO County alone for these types of potential housing projects for school teachers and support staff. It's a big deal. And then this week, the county, of course, approved its largest housing development in decades. The long-awaited Dana Reserve project will bring over 1,200 homes to our communities, including workforce and affordable units to the South County, which is a huge deal. And it also will be bringing in a number of amenities for our community partners and the folks that live and work and play in our communities. So to close, which will happen when it does, you've heard the data from Niree. The trends, the challenges, and the warning lights that we have to keep an eye on. Thank you. Great. And you've now seen what's happening on the ground thanks to the hard work of everybody in this room, the momentum, the collaboration, and the investment that are already shaping our Central Coast to have a stronger economy and a more future-proof economy for the growth. Across jobs, people, and housing, we are not just tracking the numbers. We're changing the trajectory. From launches at Vandenberg to classrooms at Cuesta, from fusion labs to infill housing projects, the story here is one of alignment, but most importantly, one of action. Business, government, education, and community partners are all pulling in the same direction, building the future that we want, rather than having to wait for someone else to come in and save the day. And this is what it looks like to move from potential to progress. Because when we work together, when we align our strengths, invest in our people, and ensure that they have a place that they like to call home, the Central Coast doesn't just keep up with the state's economy, we set the pace for it. And as we look ahead to 2026 and beyond, that's the invitation to each of you, to keep building, keep collaborating, and keep believing in what's possible when we reach together. Thank you.
Blake Bradley, everyone. Not a bad pinch hitter, if you ask me. Although next year, I think maybe if he does it again, he has to do it in Melissa's shoes. I think that would be more fair. Well, I do just want to remind you to continue to send your questions. Again, the email address is on your program. If you forget it, feel free to send me those questions now for our Q&A session at the end with Dr. Niree Kodaverdian and Chris Thornberg. Next, we have a message from sponsor Cal Poly.
Hello, I'm Jeff Armstrong, president of Cal Poly. The Central Coast Economic Forecast brings together leaders and change makers who are shaping the future of our region. We have an opportunity to align our efforts and ensure we're preparing the workforce needed to meet the demands of a rapidly evolving economy. At Cal Poly, we're proud to be part of that effort. As a catalyst for economic mobility, we welcome more than 900 local high school graduates and 500 transfer students from Allen Hancock and Cuesta colleges this fall. We are removing barriers to education by expanding our 2+2 programs, enabling students to earn a Cal Poly degree on their local community college campus. The Central Coast is quickly emerging as a hub for industries, ranging from tech and advanced manufacturing to agriculture, clean energy, and space aerospace. Cal Poly is your committed partner to educate the workforce needed to fuel these sectors. Our learn by doing approach and ready day one mindset have never been stronger. This is a special place to live and work. Thank you for all you do to help the Central Coast continue to thrive.
Thank you, Cal Poly. Whew. All right, as I promised, it's time for our halftime show. No? No one? It's going to catch on. We're going to have theme music, I guarantee you. That's right, folks. It is time for 3 minutes to win it. This is our very own kind of Shark Tank experience. So I want you all to channel your best Mark Cuban. You guys get to be the voters. We're going to hear from 3 amazing entrepreneurs from the Center of Innovation and Entrepreneurship at Cal Poly. And they're going to be pitching you their business ideas. And then you're going to get an opportunity to vote for who you think should go home with the $5,000 check. This is very exciting. Before we invite them to pitch, here to tell us a little bit about the Cal Poly Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship and how our business community can support startups and economic development is Economic Development Director Donica Forensich. In this role, Donica leads regional innovation, entrepreneurship, and economic development efforts, overseeing the Small Business Development Center and the CIA Startup Incubator Program, helping small businesses like these and startups thrive and grow across the Central Coast. She was a former corporate and securities attorney, and she's a proud Paso Robles resident. It feels like we got a lot of Bearcat spirit in the house today, so go Bearcats. She brings extensive business and legal expertise to her work and a passion for building a vibrant, innovative regional economy. Donica is actively involved in the community, serving on the board of the Central Coast Economic Forecast and partnering with various community organizations to support regional business development. Please welcome Donica Forensich.
Good morning, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here with you and tell you a little bit more about the work we do to support entrepreneurship and business growth throughout San Luis Obispo County and beyond. The CIE, which recently celebrated its 15th anniversary, is known across Cal Poly's campus for helping students explore entrepreneurship and launch their first startups. We engage students and faculty across all colleges, providing programs, mentorship, and resources to help them take root and explore their startup ideas. But beyond campus, we explore business ideas in the community with the Small Business Development Center. At the SBDC, we provide no-cost, one-on-one business advising and entrepreneurship, business advising to entrepreneurs and small businesses across all of San Luis Obispo County. Our mission is simple: to help local businesses start, grow, and thrive, whether they're developing a new product, expanding operations, or navigating today's complex economy. We have a network of more than 40 advisors specializing in everything from business strategy to finance to digital marketing. The work is made possible at the SBDC through grant funding from federal and state agencies, along with funding from the city and county of San Luis Obispo. This allows us to keep these services free for all the businesses that we serve. and the results speak for themselves. In the last 10 months alone, the SBDC has assisted over 400 companies, provided over 2,700 hours of consulting, supported the creation of 150 jobs, and helped our SBDC clients obtain over $50 million in capital funding. We're also proud to be collaborating with the Central Coast Economic Forecast and Cal Poly professor Hamid Gadosi on a new study examining the impact of tariffs on our region. So we may be reaching out to invite you to participate in a related survey or workshop as that work moves forward. While the SBDC serves a broad range of businesses, we also support the startups in our community. The incubator program at the CIE provides 2 years of intensive support, connecting founders and mentors and advisors and investors to help these business teams refine their business model, protect their intellectual property, and gain market traction. Since its inception in 2013, the incubator has graduated 47 companies, with approximately 80% still active or successfully acquired. This is a phenomenal success rate for early stage startups. Collectively, these companies have raised over $102 million. They've created approximately 450 jobs, and they've added incredible vibrancy to our regional economy. And the momentum continues. As Blake mentioned, the CIE's new location at 1144 Choro Street is well underway, which will transform a long vacant building into a dynamic hub for innovation, entrepreneurship, and economic development. The new space will bring together students, startups, and local business leaders under one roof to collaborate, connect, and continue building the future of entrepreneurship on the Central Coast. We thank our partners in the community, including the City and County of San Luis Obispo, who've made this possible. Now, for the most exciting part of the morning, hearing directly from some of the incredible founders currently in our incubator program. In just a minute, you'll meet 3 of our most promising startups, each competing for your vote. These founders represent the creativity, resilience, and optimism that define entrepreneurship in our region, and I am so proud to work with them every day. So without further ado, let's meet our contenders. Thank you.
Today, it's a battle of big ideas as 3 local startups compete for a $5,000 cash prize. Welcome to 3 Minutes to Win It, showcasing 3 of the Central Coast's best and brightest. See their passion, hear their business plans, and be ready to choose your favorite in a vote by text poll. Now, let's meet our contenders. First up, Connor Heffler, founder of ODIN Diagnostics, is bringing cutting-edge AI to the sidelines to detect dangerous concussions in just minutes, helping protect athletes when it matters most. Next, Mitchell Dann, co-founder of SafePlate Technologies, is revolutionizing food safety with rapid lab quality testing, stopping harmful contaminants before they ever reach your plate. And finally, Jenna Eissmann, co-founder of Everest Medical Solutions, is introducing a game-changing device for childbirth emergencies designed to save lives in the delivery room. So get ready. The competition starts now.
Good morning, and thanks for being here. My name is Connor Heffler, and I'm the proud founder and CEO of ODIN Diagnostics, where we help medical professionals and athletic trainers conduct rapid concussion assessments to keep their athletes healthy and avoid life-altering concussions. Every second, 12 concussions occur globally, with an estimated 3.8 million sport-related concussions that occur each year in the US alone. And 50% of all these concussions go undetected, leading to a handful of neurodegenerative diseases, lawsuits, and other long-term health effects. This is the mother of Andre Waters. Her son Andre was a 12-year NFL veteran who was diagnosed with chronic traumatic encephalopathy, or CTE, after suffering over 15 undetected concussions. Andre later took his own life. No one saw this coming. But this isn't just happening in the sport of football either, though. Millions of athletes across sports of all kinds, warfighters, and other patients alike are at risk. Because our current diagnostic tools, a pen and paper symptom checklist that takes about 20 minutes to fill out, and a manual follow my finger eye test are failing them. So that's where ODIN comes in. We're developing a sideline-ready headset that uses eye tracking technology and AI to detect concussions in less than 5 minutes. So here's how it works. Once there's suspicion of a concussion, a patient will simply put on the ODIN headset and perform a series of visual tasks, and our device will determine whether they have a concussion in just minutes. No more guesswork, no more putting lives at stake. Currently, we have 3 of our prototypes already in the hands of 3 of our future customers who are helping us actively collect real-world data, one of those sites being here in SLO County. And we will soon be the first eye tracking solution for concussion to be deployed in the urgent care setting for trial. And we have received a tremendous amount of industry traction in this process already. We secured 10 letters of intent from high school athletic programs who are chomping at the bit to get their hands on these headsets. We partnered with AYSO, one of the largest national youth sports organizations across the country that oversees over 650,000 youth athletes. We have strong support from the NFL Health Association. We were featured on ESPN+, and we are just getting started. A vote for ODIN is a vote for a safer future, and will help get us that much closer to get these headsets out to over 22,000 high school athletic programs across the country and beyond. This is a growing, ongoing epidemic that is leading to long-term harmful consequences. For Andre and millions of others across the globe, my team and I are committed to establishing a more meaningful solution to help mitigate compounding brain damage. And we will not stop until this is accomplished. Thank you so much.
I'm Mitchell. I'm the CEO of SafePlate Technologies, where we're redefining food safety through advanced contamination detection. Oh. There we go. So, I'm sure you've seen food safety in the news often recently, and it's never anything good. And why should we all be concerned? Well, about 1% of all Americans suffer from celiac disease, meaning chronic health issues and shortening of lifespans if these individuals don't avoid gluten. About 11% of all Americans suffer from food allergies. Half of this population has severe reactions. And all of us are affected by dangerous contaminants such as pathogens, heavy metals, and mycotoxins, which can cause severe acute and chronic health complications. And why do we have these breakdowns in food safety? Well, first of all, there's a lack of global regulations and standards. And on top of this, testing for contaminants at every critical control point in the food manufacturing process is just too time-consuming and expensive, leading food manufacturers to rely on risk assessments and inadequate amounts of testing. And so essentially what they're doing is leaving it down to probability, which is not working, as we can see with the $4 billion spent on recalls in the US just last year, and is not a good idea when you have the lives and health of your consumers in your hands. But SafePlate envisions a brighter future where our cost-effective and easy-to-use testing solutions can be scaled to every global critical control point in the food manufacturing process, essentially creating a much higher standard when it comes to detecting contaminants within our food. And essentially what we're doing is we're using our unique biosensor technology to leverage the benefits of the current methods on the market, so quick test time, ease of use, and lower costs, combined with better quality testing and testing for multiple contaminants at once. And we're wrapping this all into a reusable package, currently not seen on the market, which encourages manufacturers to do more testing than the current standards. And our first iteration of this is the Arceo, which is our portable and easy-to-use testing device that brings lab-grade testing directly to the food manufacturing facility. And we are deploying this at our partner's facility at the beginning of next year. Currently, we're using it to test for gluten. However, we plan on adding tests for the top 9 FDA allergens by the end of 2029. And after this, we can focus on other dangerous contaminants such as pathogens, heavy metals, and other biological and chemical agents. And the market is ready for us with, other way. Interesting. This thing's got a mind of its own. Next slide. And the market's ready for us with US gluten testing being valued at about $201 million. This goes up to $651 million when allergens are added. And the global contamination testing market for all contaminants is $24.4 billion. And we're also the team to do this. We are a group of interdisciplinary professionals. I swear we have our beautiful pictures on the next slide. We're a group of interdisciplinary professionals who are all dedicated to advancing the standards of food safety in both the United States and the world. And that's the team and the vision behind SafePlate Technologies. We hope you join us in building trust in every meal for everyone, everywhere. And last slide. Thank you.
I think the real competition is who can stand up here and keep their nerve. Aha! Thank you. I'm just going to point at you when I need the next slide. Okay, perfect. Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jenna Eissmann, and I am the CEO and co-founder of Everest Medical Solutions, where we are disrupting a $2 billion annual healthcare burden in the United States by ensuring safer birth. Next one. Okay. Every year, worldwide, 250,000 newborns die because of shoulder dystocia, an unpredictable, life-threatening emergency during vaginal childbirth where the baby's head is delivered, but its shoulders become stuck on the maternal pubic bones. Next. Current treatment involves 10 to 20 hand maneuvers in which the least invasive ones fail 75% of the time. As a result, next. Half of all shoulder dystocias end in a collarbone fracture for the baby. 1/4 of them in traumatic nerve injury, not to mention the severe life-threatening bleeding, additional hospital stays, and lifelong emotional trauma a mother can experience. Next. This is why we at Everest intervene in the treatment process before the potential for this kind of injury can even start. Next. Introducing Embrace, a single-use device that extends the reach of the physician. Now, I want everybody to imagine someone comes up behind you and gives you a big bear hug. What happens? Your shoulders will collapse inward and your arms will fall to your chest. That is exactly how Embrace works. It gently collapses the baby's shoulders and essentially swaddles them into the correct position for a safe delivery. Next. Awesome. There are currently no devices on the market to treat shoulder dystocia, but this condition affects about 3% of births worldwide each year. However, there is a competitive technology in this space, but our clinical expert advisors have reviewed Embrace next to the competition in standard of care and conclude that Embrace is designed to be minimally invasive, it can be used quickly, and it can resolve all severities of shoulder dystocia. Therefore, it is more competitive. Next. And in just the last 15 months, my team has made some fantastic progress toward our milestones. Specifically, at the beginning of October, we met with the Gates Foundation and were able to share with them that Embrace has 95% efficacy in simulated shoulder dystocias. We have also met with the largest hospital system on the West Coast who's interested in a potential partnership for future data gathering. And last, just this week, we signed a contract with a large global obstetric device distributor that will help us to grow Everest and advance our mission. Next. My co-founder and myself have listened to over 100 patient stories regarding the loss of autonomy due to shoulder dystocia. This is a problem that can be solved, and we possess the skills and the passion to do so. And we've surrounded ourselves with a truly brilliant advisory team in which 2 of our advisors have already brought successful maternal health med device companies to market. With their guidance, we can achieve Everest's mission. Next. We are Everest Medical Solutions, and we are ensuring safer birth by saving lives. Thank you.
Wow, that was so impressive. Hey, I just want to take a moment to say thank you to our entrepreneurs. You guys are all I love that they are all creating businesses that will improve or save or extend human lives. They're not just making a cool karaoke app or something like that on their phone. They're all making a difference. That's beautiful. So now it's up to you to decide who goes home with $5,000. This is how it's going to work, folks. And you should have directions on your program if you need help. But what you're going to do is open your messaging app on your phone. So take out your phone. I know this is event suicide here, but take out your phone, open the messaging app, and send a new text message to 805-649-0964. And in the text message, you're just going to write CCEF 2025. So that's the body of the text message is going to be CCEF 2025. And then you're going to get a response, and that's when you vote. Okay? Does everyone follow that? Messages, new text message, CCEF 2025. Wait for the response, and then enter your vote. Okay. I see some of you looking up with successful looks on your faces. We'll give it maybe just another 15 seconds. And then we're going to hear from another one of our sponsors. This time, a video from Amazon. Please give your attention to the screen.
Hi, I'm Mary Wachowski, a Principal Product Manager at Amazon SLO. This year, Amazon celebrated 20 years in San Luis Obispo. We employ over 200 Amazonians in 3 downtown offices and partner with Cal Poly to employ more than 50 students each year, many who stay with Amazon after graduation. Our local teams help authors self-publish through Kindle Direct Publishing, power payments to creators selling through Amazon, and help businesses scale through Amazon Web Services. We love this community and are proud to sponsor the Central Coast Economic Forecast to bring together business and community leaders and provide actionable data and analysis to this region. I hope you're enjoying the event, and now back to the forecast.
Awesome. Thank you, Amazon. Well, ladies and gentlemen, for the main event, this speaker requires no introduction. And since we're short on time, I'm not going to give much of one, but just to say that he has been here for 16 years doing this economic forecast for us. And we're so grateful that he comes back every year. And Chris Thornberg, everyone, Dr. Chris Thornberg.
Thank you so much. Good morning, San Luis Obispo. Good morning. Yeah, really? 16 years, and that's what I get. Is that where our relationship has come to, right? We barely look at it. Thank you. I appreciate that. 16 years. That's amazing, isn't it? And of course, this for me is the highlight of the year, no doubt. And I got to tell you, we all know how this works. As you get older, it goes faster and faster. And so in so many ways, it feels like yesterday we were together, right? And yet, in so many other ways, it feels so long ago, doesn't it? I mean, what a crazy year it has been. And, there's so much to talk about. So let's just jump right in. Hey, it worked. That's very good news. So you don't know who I am. Beacon Economics. We're based out of LA. And, when it comes to talking about the economy, remember, there's 2 things we have to talk about. Here's what we think is happening in our economy. That's what we see in the headlines. That's what we hear in these political campaigns. This is what we hear people talking about when we're out at night. But then the other part of the thing we have to talk about is what's actually happening in the economy. That is to say, what I see in the data on a day-to-day basis. And as we've discussed over the years, I've come to realize that not only are these things not the same, but in many ways, they are beginning pulled apart over time. I feel like our narratives are becoming more and more disengaged from the realities of the world around us. And that is one of our primary problems. Remember, ultimately, it's good choices and smart policies start with the correct narrative. And I got to tell you, even at Beacon, now when people come to me and we want to do some work, whether it's wine, whether it's housing, whatever it happens to be, really it boils down to what story we're trying to tell to who. Because we are a narrative-based creature, and it's narratives that drive the changes in the world around us. And if you want to make those changes move in a different direction, that means changing the narrative. Ultimately, of course, it isn't what we don't know that gives us trouble. It's what we know that ain't so. That's where the problems lie. And again, this just acknowledges that this is something that philosophers have known forever. Now, when you think about the 2025 narratives, again, how long does it seem since I was here last year? It was right around the election. Of course, we know what the outcome was. And whatever you think of the president, let's all acknowledge, he said, if I win re-election, I'm going to go to D.C. and I'm going to shake things up. And he absolutely has gone to D.C. and shaken things up. It has been a nonstop chaotic news cycle, right up, of course, to today. It just does not stop. And unfortunately, the economy doesn't really like to have things shaken up, right? We've seen the collapse in consumer confidence after the rebound we saw last year. The policy uncertainty index has been going through the roof. But with all this, of course, comes the standard set of headlines. We're panicked about the labor markets, and it seems like we're not adding any jobs in the U.S. at this particular point in time. We have the tariff issues that are driving a lot of worries in our economy right now. Real estate veterans warn of hopelessness in our housing markets. And, of course, we hear about how tourism is in dire trouble at this particular point in time. And now, of course, the federal shutdowns that are occurring. And for any of you who may be flying out today, you might want to get to the airport a little bit early, okay? Because apparently it's all chaos because they've cut back on some of the flights. And with that in mind, of course, UBS recently pushed its probability of a recession up to 93%. Here we go, right? I need to remind you, right? How do you know a macroeconomist has a sense of humor? They use a decimal point, okay? This is not a field that invites exactitude. And any macroeconomist that tells you they have a 93% certainty of anything happening is either lying to themselves or lying to you. And of course, we have certainly seen that over the last few years. Remember the 2019 real estate recession we were going to have? Or how about that 2020 pandemic depression we were going to have? And then there was the 2023 yield curve recession that didn't actually show up either, right? Again, all this reminds me of what John Kenneth Galbraith said, that the only function of economic forecasting is to make astrology look respectable. Now, before I feel too bad, okay, about my particular profession, I also want to point out another forecast from last year when I was with you. And this is Nate Silver, just a year ago, the mighty Nate Silver at 538. The closest election of the century keeps getting closer. 2 weeks ago, 538's forecast of a presidential election gave Kamala Harris a 58 in 100 chance of defeating Donald Trump, but it's a coin toss. Yeah, wasn't exactly a coin toss. Trump won by a significantly larger margin in 2020 in 2024 than he did back in 2016. And that gives me a new expression, which is the only function of election polling is to make economic forecasting look respectable again. So that's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Now, there's other economic narratives we have to pay attention to as well. You know, we all know that, right? And you're thinking, oh, you mean how the Dodgers won the second World Series in a row? That particular, here we go, right? But no, that's not the narrative I'm talking about. Oh, how about the narrative about how Harry had to apologize to Canada for wearing a Dodgers hat at the game? How about that narrative? Hey, he was under duress, people. It is tough being an ex-prince. Just ask Andrew. He'll tell you all about it. But no, not that one either, okay? Not that one either. In fact, the other economic narrative I'm talking about, of course, is the fact that no matter how bad the news is, NASDAQ just keeps going higher and higher and higher. I mean, take a look at the data. 5 or 6 years ago, NASDAQ, the market capitalization of NASDAQ was $13 trillion. Today, it's $33 trillion. Let that rattle around just a little bit in your head. And how do we think about that valuation? Well, I like the Shiller PE ratio, right, which is cyclically adjusted price earnings. By the way, as of yesterday, it was nearly 40, the highest PE ratio ever in our stock market except for back in 1999. How about that for a narrative, right? That's a little bit shocking. And of course, along with that, we have to remember good old cryptocurrency, because Bitcoin's still above $100,000, which makes it roughly overvalued by about $100,000, okay? I'd love to show you the earnings on that, the PE ratio, but it doesn't have an earnings, which kind of worries me. And of course, the market capitalization of Bitcoin is over $2 trillion. Think about that, okay? To put that in context, that means Bitcoin is worth more than Google or Meta, a couple of those companies that have been driving the stock market to all-time high levels. Now again, does this feel right to you? And this is all getting tied together. For example, a whole bunch of the IPOs in NASDAQ are crypto trading firms who very often are being IPO'd at a value above the value of the crypto they're holding, which actually has a value of 0. Again, kind of worrisome. And now we have the Genius Act, which is tying cryptocurrency to the bond market through, of course, this stablecoin thing. Now again, stablecoin has got to be one of the most ridiculous euphemisms I've ever heard in my entire life. But understand that they're going to be taking money for crypto and investing it in the bond markets. They're tying it all together. And you know, Wall Street doesn't mind. Wall Street is on deck to receive the biggest bonus since 2021. These guys are raking it in, and man, that is all that matters. Remember, of course, what the wise man said, be fearful with others are greedy, and right now Wall Street seems pretty greedy, and we all have to watch out. Where does this all end? Now, last year when I was with you, this is what I told you. I said, I'm okay. We're not going to have recession. Things are fine, but pay attention. Deficits, the asset bubble, these are the problems, along with the ugly politics around the political rhetoric around politics right now, which obviously is exactly what's been happening over the last year. So what about this year? Well, again, overall, the economy remains solid. Oh, things have slowed since we were here last year. There's no doubt about it. After all, some of that pandemic stimulus high has been wearing off. We have reduced labor supply. Yes, labor supply is dropping, although you don't see in the data. I'll come back to that in a second. And yes, there's the economic uncertainty. But by the way, there's all sorts of strengths. Household finances, still record good. Business finances looking great. Inflation has cooled off, and rates are starting to drop. And probably the best news in the short term of all is, guess what? They're spiking the punch. We got the one big beautiful bill, which is adding more deficit spending, and the Federal Reserve has been backing off, cutting the federal funds rate, and continuing their realm of course, getting rid of quantitative tightening and allowing the money supply to expand. So really, things look pretty good right now. And as for California, for all the dismal news out there, local economic fundamentals in this state are still very, very solid. Housing shortages. I have beat this topic to death over the last 16 years. It is still the biggest challenge we have. And yes, we have yet to figure out what to do about it. We're just not seeing any major solutions. But of course, the problem here is that all of our problems are self-made, because they are created by bad narratives driving bad policy across the state of California. Every time I walk into a city hall or I walk into the Capitol building, the narratives I'm hearing that are driving policies are so far off base, it's hard to believe that this is the real world. But with all that said, ultimately, when does this cycle come to an end? I mean, after all, we are now in the 5th year of this particular economic cycle, and it begs the question, when is the next downturn? Well, as always, you have to pay attention to the imbalances. Recessions are driven by a big decline in aggregate demand from some part of the economy. Sometimes that decline in aggregate demand is because, we have to close every restaurant in the airports because of a pandemic. But typically, this big decline in aggregate demand comes from some imbalance that is snapping back to normalcy. For example, if you go back to 2006 and you look at the housing market and the mortgage borrowing, the imbalances were clear to see. Well, the imbalances today, of course, are in that government deficit that we continue to run, that continues to expand, combined with the asset bubble. And how those two things fit together and what it means for our economy over the next couple of years, well, I'm going to get to that at the end of this particular presentation once I get through, of course, backing up all my claims on those first two parts. All right? Now, of course, and always QR code, if you want to get it, it'll be made available to you through the CCEF website as well. After all, this is a wonderful partnership we've had for 16 years, and we like to support everything they do. So jumping right in, again, GDP growth, it slowed. It hasn't stopped. We're still growing at about 2.1% on a year-over-year basis. We started the year out pretty slow. We had a negative growth in the first quarter of the year. But when the smoke cleared in the second quarter, it was nearly 4% growth. And according to the data about what we're going to see in Q3, whenever that data is actually released, because we're not getting any data given the government shutdown, but again, expectations are that growth will be somewhere between the high 2s and the high 3s when those numbers are eventually released. So actually, 2025 is shaping up to be a pretty good year. And when you ask what was the slowdown in the first part of the year, well, it turns out it was consumers that have largely pulled back. It wasn't trade, it wasn't business investment, it was largely consumers. But if you look a little closer, even there, the data looks better than you might think. Restaurant spending continues to rise. In fact, nominal restaurant spending in the U.S. right now is up 6% from where it was a year ago. And you probably all heard stories about how Vegas has turned into a ghost town. Well, it doesn't seem to be at the gambling tables because gaming revenues haven't fallen off at all. And of course, auto sales are continuing apace, running about 16 million units on an annualized basis, coming right in to the third quarter of the year. More data that suggests consumers are doing pretty well. As for tourism, look, there's been a slowdown in people coming to the United States, perhaps not much of a surprise, but at the same time, Americans aren't going abroad much either. In fact, on both cases, you've seen about a $20 billion decrease in spending, and that's a wash. Overall air traffic in the United States has leveled off, but it's leveled off at about 5% higher than it was prior to the pandemic. Airlines certainly seem pretty busy. They're going to be very busy today. And even spending on various sorts of entertainment, such as gambling, spectator sports, and amusement parks, well, those continue to be solid, and in some cases are actually starting to move up. As for California, state visitor counts still below where they were prior to the pandemic, but again, 2025 is shaping up to be what you would call kind of a normal year. And while hotels have cooled off, there's no doubt about it, we're hearing about the hotel issues. Let's be clear, they're cooling off after a number of years of pretty large growth in terms of their overall revenues and the room rates at this particular point in time. San Luis Obispo, for example, the RevPAR is about $120. That's down 1.5% from last year, but of course up 30% from where it was prior to the pandemic. And there's good news about this, because look, while things may be slow now, we got some big things coming to the state. We got the World Cup, we have the Olympics. There are a lot of things happening here, which is going to drive interest in coming to this amazing place, and you're going to see better numbers on this particular front. What about wineries? Isn't the winery news incredibly tragic? Every time you turn around, no one's drinking. They're ripping up grapes all over the place. Gen Z doesn't drink anymore, right? Now, it's funny about this is when I actually look at the data, people are drinking. There's no doubt about it. I mean, you have to be in this political environment, don't you? I mean, you just got to go home and just chug a couple. And what's interesting, if you look at real consumption of spirits, wine, and beer, they've all been rising over the last couple of years. Wine, by the way, has been rising most dramatically over the course of the last couple of years. Real wine consumption is up. Now, I appreciate that that's different than what you might hear from the Wine Institute, because the Wine Institute doesn't look at the BEA numbers. They count gallons of wine drunk. And gallons of wine being drunk has gone down, even though real consumption of wine has gone up. Well, how do we square these two different things? Well, the difference here is like the difference between looking at auto sales by the sum of the quality of the cars being sold or just the unit numbers. Look, if you go from, I don't know, selling a million Porsche, Hyundais to selling 800,000 Porsches, well, guess what? In that just number of units, it's gone down by 20%. But if you look at the real value, it's gone up because they're much nicer, much more expensive cars. And that's what you're seeing here. What's really happening, of course, is people are no longer drinking Boxo wine. They're instead drinking White Claw and Twisted Tea or some other horrible beverage that someone has come up with and stuck into an aluminum can. But of course, that does not impact what you would call the high-end industry, or really, of course, the wine tourism industry. And when you think about the big decline in the grape crush, some of this, of course, is the decline in exports. But again, a lot of it is the Boxo wine stuff. If you look across the state of California, you know where most grapevines are getting ripped up? Fresno, Kern County, Stockton, places, of course, that are, well, filling up those Boxo wines, not here along the coast. Now, with that in mind, how about the wine tourism industry? Well, this gets, I think, to the bigger issue. Wine tourism is doing great. Look at the number of wineries. It just continues to grow in the United States. Right now, in the beginning of 2025, there are 5,800 wineries in our nation, up 877 from where it was 5 years ago. Napa has 63 more. San Luis Obispo has 25 more. Well, here's the problem. There's too many wineries. This is an oversupply problem. But then again, it's a vanity industry. We know that. Look, 16 years ago when I started here, let's remember, everybody said, how do you make $1 million in wine? The answer, you start with $2 million. Today, it's how do you make $1 million in wine? You start with $4 million. That's inflation, okay? But it's the same basic issue. And by the way, it's not just wineries. By the way, we have too many restaurants in California. Look at the major decline in population per restaurant. Everybody's opening a restaurant. We've seen a 25% increase in hotels in the state, and that's one of the reasons they're struggling. There's too many hotels. So this is not a problem of a lack of demand. It's just that we've kind of leaned in a little bit too much in this particular space. And maybe the industry needs to, shall we say, right size just a little bit to get to a more stable footing. But this has nothing to do with wanting to be in California and enjoying that wonderful place out there. And when you look a little closer at the consumer slowdown, what do you see? Well, again, it's not consumers per se. You know what's interesting? What's in consumer spending is two big things. One is nonprofits, which seems weird, but nonprofits kind of operate like a household, so that's where they get lumped. Another big thing, of course, is healthcare spending. But that healthcare spending, for the most part, is not purchased. It is either handed out to you from the federal government in the form of Medicare and Medicaid, or, of course, it's purchased through your insurance. Well, this is the two big declines. It's healthcare and nonprofits, and that, of course, smells like Doge and all the cuts Doge was doing in the first part of the year. Not a problem with consumers. Consumers' finances look amazing. Household debt as a percent of GDP is falling, it continues to fall. Household net worth in real inflation-adjusted terms is back to an all-time high level, and real median household incomes continue to grow over the course of the last couple of years. But things are fine. There has been an increase in credit card delinquencies, but this is an anomaly, not the tip of the iceberg. Overall foreclosures and bankruptcies still near a record low level, and Americans aren't even carrying a lot of debt burden because of interest rates, because most household debt is in the form of a 30-year fixed-rate mortgage that they probably refinanced in 2020 at 2.75%, which you will pry from my cold dead hands, just saying out loud. Anyway. But now, for all this, you know, we all know, well, that's wonderful, but that's just for the top 10%. We live in the new Gilded Age, everybody. Haven't you heard about it? The tech pros are making all the money, and the rest of us are suffering in the meantime. And, of course, everybody who runs with this keeps telling us about the K-shaped recovery, right? It's a K-shaped recovery where the top 10% are doing great, and everybody else is struggling. Well, no, it's not that either. If you look at the data over the last 10 years, it's pretty interesting. Look. The biggest increases in real household incomes was indeed the top 5%. They've seen about a 31% increase in their real earnings over the course of the last decade. The bottom 40%, they ran about 23%. So yes, there's no doubt that the top 5% seem to be getting out ahead of everybody else, but everybody's doing better off. And as far as net worth goes, do we have a problem with wealth inequality? Oh yeah, we do. The top 1% of Americans own 30% of all net worth in this nation. That's not fair. It's not sustainable. But that said, it hasn't changed in 20 years. It's not a crisis. Nothing's changed. This is the same problem we have going all the way to the turn of the century. There is no new information here at all. And of course, there's another reason we don't live in the Gilded Age. In the Gilded Age, back in the 1920s, we didn't have Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, food stamps, Section 8 housing, Head Start, aid for needy families, and so on and so forth. Those didn't exist. And by the way, you kind of have to pay attention to that. Right now, the government, our federal government, spends $4.4 trillion on benefits for family. 1 out of $5 of income going to American households is given to those households through the form of federal transfers. 1 out of 5. By the way, when you start taking into account taxes paid and benefits received, it completely changes the story about who's falling behind and who's getting ahead. This is from the Congressional Budget Office. And what's so interesting, who's way out in front right now? Well, yeah, it's the top 20%. They've been the beneficiaries of course, great tax cuts over the course of the last 20 years, first under Bush and then under Trump. But the second group that has actually done very well in the United States is the bottom 20%, because they've been beneficiaries of big expansions in social support programs under Obama and under Biden. So it's the top and bottom 20% that are doing better. It's the middle 60%. These are the folks who are falling behind. And of course, we all hear about the poverty rate and how we're living in such impoverished times. Here in California, we're told that we have the highest poverty rate in the nation, tied to Louisiana, on the basis of a supplemental poverty rate. Which, by the way, when you look at how that thing was made, it is the biggest pile of garbage I've ever seen in my life. Never look at the supplemental poverty rate. But the official poverty rate, to be clear, is about 11% right now. Now, again, that's the official poverty rate based on your gross income. It doesn't include Medicare, Medicaid, food stamps, Section 8 housing, so on and so forth. The CBO did an analysis where they asked, what's the poverty rate once you include benefits received? And it turns out it's 0.5%. 0.5%. Now, the supplemental poverty rate, by the way, currently says that the national poverty rate is 13%. Why? Because it doesn't include a bunch of benefits, and it's completely changed the level of poverty in the nation. It's changing the conversation completely. It does not actually tell us anything. Now, does that mean we don't have any problems? No, we do have a problem. We absolutely do. It isn't that there's a lot of suffering families. Families have enormous access to government resources, and that's a good thing. I have no problem with that. The problem we have is, why are so many families still reliant on these programs? Hey, you remember the old expression, give a man a fish, you feed him for a day, teach a man to fish, and you feed him for a lifetime? Our problem here is not that these families are struggling, it's why can't they do it on their own? And the answer there is very simple. It's education. It's fixing our education system. And we're not doing that. We're not focused on that. We're simply focused on handing out more rather than fixing the underlying problem that exists in the first place. Fixing the symptoms is not the solution. Simple as that. And how about California? How are we doing? Well, again, highest poverty rate in the nation. Everybody's fleeing to California. Homelessness defines what our state is, right? And it's true, we haven't been growing very rapidly. We're way behind Texas. You're seeing problems in manufacturing, problems in professional and scientific services. Our unemployment rate's risen by more, and we're losing our otherwise record share of national GDP that's been produced here in California. We peaked at a little over 14.5%. We're now below 14.5%. We seem to be losing ground. And yes, office buildings, government deficits, we know all the bad news. But again, take a step back and let's think about California on the intensive margin. For example, median household incomes in California just past $100,000. That is 20% higher than the rest of the nation. If you look at the highest income counties in the nation, 11 of the top 100 are still here in California. The job openings rate is stabilized at a hair less than it was prior to the pandemic. At this particular point in time, doesn't seem to be a lot of problems there. In fact, it's firmed up a bit over the course of the last year. Real per capita spending continues to rise dramatically in the state. And if you look at taxable sales, particularly in the inland parts of the state, like Stockton, Fresno, Bakersfield, look at those big increases. Some of that is the warehouse, but some of that is the fact that spending out there is growing quite rapidly. Now again, but it's all the gilded class, right? Well, no. The official poverty rate in California is 12%, but again, doesn't include Medi-Cal, doesn't include Section 8 housing, doesn't include food stamps. You include those, and ours is probably just as low as the national number, as the case may be. And on the right-hand side, of course, you could take a look and see that Hispanic and black households have seen more earnings growth than the average over the course of the last five years, which again is great news. We're seeing more equality. The fight against inequality isn't over, but the trends are moving in the right direction, and we should celebrate this, right? But no, no, no. We're panicked because of our sky-high cost of living. You might say, that's all good news, but it costs so much to live here. Well, it does, but not as much as you think. In fact, we don't have to guess about what it costs to live here. The Bureau of Economic Analysis does something called the regional price parity, where they truly look, they measure how much more would you spend it to live in California compared to everywhere else in the United States. And the answer is about 12.5%. Now, wait, 12.5%, that's all it is? Yes. Now, why wouldn't it be more than that? I mean, look how enormously expensive housing is, which is true. Housing is 60% more expensive here than the rest of the nation. But most everything else costs the same. If you go on Amazon, anything you buy on this Amazon costs exactly the same here as it does in the state of Missouri or Montana. It's as simple as that. And many other things, again, are the same price. And by the way, when you move to a place like California, you know what you do? You consume less housing and more other stuff. It's a relative price effect. You add it all up, it's 12%, that's it. We did some analysis where we looked at real incomes in California compared to the rest of the nation accounting for this, and it turns out Californians make more money than the rest of the nation at every single decile of income. We are the most prosperous state in the nation. We're not the poorest by any stretch of the imagination. So why? Why do groups consistently talk about California's persistent poverty crisis when it doesn't exist? And of course, the answer is, give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish, and you'll lose your nonprofit's funding grant. Think about it. Look, business profits continue to rise. Corporate profits continue to rise. Manufacturing's doing great. Industrial production is up. Profits are through the roof. The only part of manufacturing that is not doing well is jobs, because this is an industry that relies on worker productivity growth to pay the bills. That's what they do, right? And of course, we all think, well, we need more manufacturing jobs, don't we? This is one of my favorite reality versus narrative surveys. 80% of Americans say the country would be better off with more manufacturing jobs, but only 25% actually want one. It's good for somebody else, right? So what about tariffs? What are they doing to our economy since, they're here to help our manufacturing base? Well, first of all, put aside the idea that tariffs have anything to do with manufacturing or policy of any sort. Tariffs are being used for one reason and one reason only, and that is political leverage. Political leverage on other countries and political leverage on large companies inside the United States. It's leverage. Simple as that. Now, with that being said, let's say they really went full Monty and they just put 20% across the board tariffs on everything in the United States. Is that going to blow up our economy? No, not even close. We are not an import-dependent nation because we're such a large economy. We're not Netherlands. We're not New Zealand. We don't worry about trade as much as other nations do. And go to the next step on that. Because we're such a large economy, 20% of the global economy, if you're going to come here and sell something, you're pricing to our market for the most part. You don't have pricing power. So the net result of that is, even if you said, let's just put some numbers to it. If you slapped a 20% across-the-board tariff on everything, you're talking about a $650 billion tax. You just import all the same stuff, you got to pay $650 billion more. Who's going to pay that? Well, half of it's going to be paid by the foreign exporters for all the reasons I just noted, right? They have to take some of the hit, which they are. That leaves, $325 billion left over. Who pays that? Well, half of that will get paid by the supply chain, and the other half will hit American households, a little less than $200 billion, call it $167 billion or something like that. Well, isn't that a big number? No. The disposable income of American households is $22 trillion. That's less than 1%. It's a drop in the bucket. Now, don't get me wrong. Some industries get hit. Some industries get torqued. Some industries are having problems. But they're the minority, not the majority. For the most part of this nation, it's a big problem. But, of course, we haven't come anywhere close to 20%. Not even close. Why? Well, every time they slap a tariff, they start handing out exemptions. That's the leverage part. And, of course, Canada and Mexico, because they fall under the USMCA, well, as long as they meet local sourcing rules, it doesn't matter what tariffs they put on them. 85% of the stuff coming out of Mexico and Canada have no tariffs attached at all. So the net result is we're only paying about $100 billion in tariffs right now. It's not a big number. It really isn't. And, of course, this may all go away because 2 days ago the Supreme Court heard some arguments on this, and they sounded just a wee bit skeptical about what's going on this particular front. So this may be just water under the bridge in a couple weeks. And even when it comes to the idea that inflation's going up, it's not. Inflation's been steady. It's running a little hot in the high 2%. But again, high 2%, the target's 2. Remember, macroeconomists who use a decimal point, it's not a big deal. Simple as that. And if you look at where inflation is increasing, it's not goods. It's insurance, it's housing, it's airplanes, it's recreation services, it's restaurants, it's hotels. It's not trade. It's not what's going on. And because, of course, inflation has cooled off, the Fed's starting to cut again. They've slowed down quite a bit in quantitative tightening, which is allowing bank deposits to grow again, which is taking the pressure off the financial system. Interest rates are starting to drop. It's easier to get a mortgage than it was a year ago. It's easier to get a C&I loan than it was a year ago. Things are pretty good. But you wouldn't know it, right? This is the Gallup poll of the percent of Americans satisfied with their personal life. Sounds like too much information, but it's a good metric. And you can see in 2025, it hit 46%, the lowest it had ever been. You got 7 out of 10 college students saying the country's on the wrong track, mainly because their new employer said you have to come to the office twice a week. Maybe, please, pretty please. Or 70% of American parents think their kids are going to be worse off than they are. It's like, what are you thinking? Have you looked at your child? Have you actually considered their life? But this is where we are. I showed you this last year, and again, it's such a beautiful illustration of this problem. This is a survey done by the Federal Reserve where they asked a ton of people, how are you doing financially? Back in 2017, 74% of people said I'm doing okay or living comfortably. In 2024, 73% of the people said the same thing. That's the same number. Now, people are better off, but we're inherently unsatisfied. That's human nature. So to me, that's exactly what I expect to see. People are fine. The real question is what real interesting part here is when they ask, well, how are people in your community doing and how are people in the rest of the nation doing? And those numbers are falling. So what does that mean? That means the average person thinks they're doing fine, but the average person thinks the average person is really struggling. It doesn't work like that. I've explained this to you last year. Look, 95% of parents think their kids are above average. Doesn't work like that. Sorry. So then what to make of this red wave, right? Well, again, it boils down to this. First of all, put this idea that anybody winning any kind of election is a mandate. There is no mandate in American politics anymore. Well over a third of American voters are nonpartisan. They don't connect with either party. They determine the outcome of elections, not the party partisans. Where does that bulk in the middle go, right? That's what determines things. Why did Harris lose? Actually, in retrospect, it was obvious. Look, I did a little analysis where I simply looked at what happens in an election given what happens to consumer confidence over the course of the previous 4 years. And it's very clear. Every time consumer confidence falls over the course of the presidency, that party's gone every single time. If it goes up, it's a bit of a mix, right? Usually a win, a couple times a loss. But if it goes down, you're gone. So you might say, well, you know, hey, man, it's just the old lesson. It's the economy, stupid. But I pointed out to you last year, like this year, the economy is great. So really, it's the narrative driving things. And this gets to the power of the narrative. It is moving elections. So who should Trump be thanking for this? Well, ask what people are upset about. One of the big issues was clearly inflation. Now, I've told you the last couple of years, inflation was driven by excessive demand. That's how it works. But people don't see it that way. They're upset. And so lo and behold, we need someone new in office, and that new person happened to be Trump. So who should Trump be thanking for his big win? Well, of course, the answer is this guy, Jerome Powell. And I just love the delicious irony of this, right? I mean, he wants this guy gone desperately. Want him gone? He should be sending him flowers, candy, a little thank you note for keeping me out of jail or something like that, right? Oops. Anyway, now we have a new force in town, and you flip the switch, Republicans are ecstatic, and Democrats are miserable, and we're all upset again, and now you see the inevitable political swing going back the other way. And yeah, Mamdani, of course, in New York, the avowed socialist, is a representation of that big shift. And this is what our crazy narratives are doing. It's creating this violent political back and forth in the midst of an economy that is pretty well off, all said and done. So crazier and crazier politics wrapped around the economy, that's not doing all that poorly. Well, but wait. What about these labor numbers? What's going on there? Yes, the labor numbers are way down. We're seeing the big revisions. But the unemployment rate's 4%. You know, it's interesting. You look at job separations, right? They're not up, they're down. In fact, if there's anything going on in our labor market, it's bizarrely cold. People aren't quitting at all. That's a different kind of issue out there, right? And in any case, as far as the revisions, we knew something was going wrong. Look, there's two ways of measuring employment: the household survey of people and the payroll survey of businesses. The household employment number is always larger than the payroll number because of self-employed, who will show up in household but not in payroll. But that gap between these metrics has collapsed. It used to be 4 and 4.5 million back in 2021, and over the last year, it's been 1 million. There's something not right with the surveys. Now, that means they're overcounting jobs in payrolls, or they're undercounting jobs in the household survey. Well, we know about payrolls. Payrolls right now are down a little less than 1 million, which suggests, of course, that, well, that's part of the problem. But that still leaves 1.5 million people unaccounted for. That means we're undercounting household employment by 1.5 million. Well, why is that survey so screwed up? And, of course, the answer is immigration. You know, the census has to try and estimate how many people are moving here. And given that most of our immigration over the last few years has been dominated by those who are doing so in an undocumented sort of way, that's a little hard. They've been estimating about 1 million people a year. The CBO suggested it could have been, for a couple of years, over 3 million people a year living here. Now, mind you, you might have a problem with this, but here's a stark reality. We desperately need these people. In the last 15 years, this nation has added officially 17 million people to our labor force. Almost 10 million of those folks were born overseas. Well over half of all workers entering our labor market are coming from people who were born overseas, immigrants who've come to this country to build a better life for themselves. We need these folks. Now, thank you. Yeah, we do. And you know the power of these folks because, as the Washington Post noted a couple of years ago, one of the reasons the economy has been growing so dramatically is, of course, all these immigrants who are coming in here. And it is yet again another thing that upset a lot of folks, which is why they voted for Trump. And, look, I understand a lot of people coming here undocumented is not a reasonable way of doing it. We clearly need to fix our incredibly broken immigration system. But that isn't even a conversation. It's not even a whisper in D.C. at this particular point in time, which really leaves us in a very chaotic and uncomfortable position. But, of course, we have a new sheriff in town. The tone has changed. And guess what? People are not coming over the border. And, in fact, according to the Pew Charitable Trust and some of their surveys, people may well be leaving. And this is the problem. They added the economy when they came, and they're going to take from the economy when they leave. It's as simple as that. Look, if we stop having immigration, we're perilously close to peak labor force, and that's a big problem. Now, it's funny, I'm worried about labor scarcity. Everybody else is worried about losing their job to the AI man, right? It's going to be showing up in the office in the morning. That's the other big boogeyman. But look, AI is incredibly transformative. We all know that it's going to be a very important part of how our businesses morph and change and innovate over the next few years. But all that said, let's be honest. AI is not really this guy showing up in the elevator in the morning. It's more like the Dustin Hoffman character in Rain Man, which means he's really, really good at doing some things and completely incapable of doing most everything else. So it's a tool. It's going to add to things. It's not going to steal all our jobs. And by the way, it's a good thing that this is starting to show up. Look, we used to have great worker productivity growth in the 50s and 60s, 2.5% to 3% per year. In the 70s and early 80s, that collapsed, in part because of deindustrialization, in part because of the inflation problems we had, which tends to hurt worker productivity growth. But then it started growing with the dot-com boom and the internet and all that new information technology. And that was great, right? We needed that productivity growth, but then it started going away again. Well, what happened? Well, of course, the answer there was the next wave of technology, which, of course, was smartphones and social media. And if we haven't figured it out, this is not good technology. In fact, this is the technology that's making us all batshit crazy. It should be regulated like a drug. But now, of course, AI is starting to turn that thing in the other direction, and that's a good thing. Again, going back to the idea that our problem is labor force growth, that little burst we had because of immigration is going to go away. Well, we better have worker productivity growth if we're planning on paying $38 trillion in debt. And as for the so-called tech bust in California and the Bay Area, there's no tech bust. Oh, there's fewer jobs, there's no doubt about it, but a huge surge of venture capital. Tech wages are going, all sorts of new tech establishments are growing. But yes, they're growing without those entry-level workers because they're using AI. But that's okay. You remember Dutch disease? For all the fact that you're not adding these new low-level tech jobs, the rest of the Bay Area, which was starved for workers, is greedily taking those guys up, and that's why the unemployment rate remains so low at this particular point in time. Is Dutch disease problem means that success in one sector can hurt your other sectors. If you don't have that sector sucking all the oxygen out of the air, other parts of your local economy can prosper, which is generally a good thing. And of course, our fair state, it is a population problem. We simply don't have enough people. We have no population growth in 5 or 6 years. Again, why is Texas growing faster than we are? In the last 6 years, they've added almost 2 million people to their labor force. We've added 200,000. They've added 10 times as many workers as we have. Of course they're growing faster. Well, that's because everybody's fleeing to Texas. No one's fleeing to Texas. Have you been to Texas? Trust me, no one's fleeing to Texas. It's a perfectly lovely place, but it's much nicer here, okay? What's happening is they're getting pushed out, and we know that because even though, yes, population's falling, the housing vacancy rates remain record low. On the right-hand side, there are more households. The problem here is that we have more demand for housing locally. People are spreading out. You're seeing a big decline in people per household, which is a sign of wealth and success. And that internal demand for housing is eating up all new housing plus some and pushing up prices and pushing people out of the state. This is a basic equilibrium. And that is exactly why the inland parts of the state, from the Inland Empire, Sacramento, the Central Valley, has been the dominant source of job growth in the state. They build housing. They have population growth, ergo they have labor force growth. 85% of all jobs created in the California economy in the last 6 years were done in the center part of the state because of this basic phenomenon. But why do we have rising unemployment then, if it's a labor force problem? And of course, that's 16 to 19-year-olds. That's where the increase in unemployment is. Why can't they get a job? Well, look at our minimum wage. $16.50 across the board, $20 if you happen to be a corporate fast food chain. That is a really high number in real terms. This is expensive. And guess what? If you're trying to run a small restaurant, if you're trying to run a supermarket, with this kind of pay, you're not going to hire a kid, particularly not a kid from an at-risk neighborhood. You're not going to do it. Why would you take a chance? It's kids who bear the burden of these kind of rules. We're not fixing things. We're not beating the billionaires. We're taking job opportunities away from kids. You're moving the deck chairs around the Titanic. You're not solving anything. And for anybody who thinks it hasn't had an impact, look at California limited service restaurant employment. It's dropped by 40,000 jobs since they started this thing. That's the minimum wage right there in a nutshell, period. You can't argue with that, right? And now we're going in for more. LA has a $30 an hour hotel minimum wage. San Diego has $25 an hour for all their tourism workers. And again, hey, when this passed, I was in the city hall and they're pumping the fist. We beat the billionaires. Really? Do billionaires go to SeaWorld? Yeah, they do. They rent the entire thing out for their friends. And they don't care about the minimum wage, okay? Do billionaires rent bikes to ride around the market? No, you're not beating the billionaires. You're beating the kids who'd love to go to SeaWorld and spend a little time in San Diego. What are we doing? What are we doing? The problem, of course, is the lack of housing, and this is the one thing we continue to completely fail at. We're just not building enough housing. And, well, why would you build housing now? Record unaffordable, right? Well, no, not really. Yes, I know, interest rates are up, the home markets are really clean, but it's not that unaffordable. I know, you're told it all the time. That is the standard narrative. But when you account for interest rates and prices and incomes, it looks like housing is roughly where it was, say, back in 2004 and 5. And it didn't seem to bother anybody then. And, of course, even here, you know, you go way back in time, it's roughly the same as it was, say, in 1980s. But keep in mind, houses today are a hell of a lot nicer than they were in the 1980s. None of this is quality adjusted. Houses in the 1980s maybe had a one-car garage. They were 1,500 square feet. Air conditioning? Probably not. Solar? Absolutely not. The houses today are so much nicer, never accounted for, right? And even in California, for all quote-unquote the issues with rising housing costs, actually median owner cost as a percent of household income is going down, not up. And if you want to look at, recent owners, on the right-hand side there, in the United States, in 2018, a new buyer, that is to say someone who bought in the last 2 years, paid 25% of their income. It's now 27.5%. California went from 30% to 33%. That's it. You might say, how is that possible with these high prices, these high interest rates? And the answer is there are so few units for sale that the only people who can actually buy that house has a very high income. And that's the key. Housing prices are not handed to us like manna from heaven. They don't drop on us. It's a function of a market equilibrium between supply and demand, between living in California and living in the rest of the United States. Take housing affordability. Look at rental prices. This is median rent as a percent of income. We are exactly 2 percentage points higher than the rest of the nation. And we've been that way for 10, 15 years because of equilibriums. What this tells me is people are willing to spend 2% more of their income to live in California relative to the rest of the United States. And my answer is that low? I would have thought it would have been higher. But that's what it is. It's an equilibrium, as simple as that. On the right-hand side, California's median rent income 33%, Chicago 30%, LA 34%, Phoenix 31%. It's the same because that is how markets work. And if you want to look at post-rent income, we have some of the highest post-rent incomes in the nation. Again, we are a prosperous state, not one that's struggling with the cost of living. But of course, the answer, more rent control. Broken narratives, broken policies. It's building supply. That's what we need to do. But I got to tell you, it's not that easy. Supply right now is hard to do. And that's because of a breakdown in what we call the filtering process. What's filtering? Well, look. You hear this all the time. We have a shortage of affordable housing in California. That's an oxymoron. That doesn't exist. That statement is illogical. We have a shortage of housing, which has an impact of affordability. Okay? That is how it works. And typically, you know, if you're a housing economist, the answer is build whatever the hell you want. And they're going to mainly build at the high end. And that's okay. That's where the fattest margins are. That's where you make your profits. And that still supplies the entire market through the filtering process. Go to Texas. They build a big, fancy new neighborhood of 5,000 square foot houses, and people from the previous fancy one move there. And from the one step below them, move there. And the one step below them, move there. And then, of course, people move out of apartments into that now entry-level neighborhood. That is the filtering process. It needs a lot of liquidity. But it works. It's a very powerful system. By the way, anybody in the audience going, that doesn't work, ask yourself this: do you believe in gentrification? Because gentrification is the opposite. It's when you won't build at the top and rich people buy your entry-level units. That's gentrification. It's the exact opposite process. This is how it works. Now, here's the problem. See, it used to be you had that nice filtering mechanism, but now you got all those people with that 30-year fixed-rate mortgage. They're not willing to move, which is why there's no liquidity in the market. And that means you have to deliver directly to where people need it. That means entry-level housing. And boy, is that hard to do in the state of California. Just consider that your standard house, no matter what size, no matter how much it's worth, if it's a townhouse or a 7,000-foot mansion, has the same sewer hookup fee. It has the same permit fee, the same this fee, the same that fee. Everything's the same. If you need entry-level housing, you got to get rid of the $200,000 a door. But we don't have those conversations, do we? And of course, if you want more housing, how do you do it? It's not complicated. Look at everything that Scott Wiener's tried to do over the last decade, and he's failed. Because all those things are about building housing affordability, more housing. We finally got CEQA reform. And you know what? It was so full of poison pills, it didn't change anything. It didn't change a damn thing. And of course, all these cities are passing these mansion taxes, which sound good on paper until you realize that it destroys any incentive for value-add investors. No one's building apartments in LA right now because of this crap, right? You know, in the Palisades, we had the huge fire. Scary. We need to rebuild. And they're too worried about prohibiting SB 9 applications for dual housing, for two houses on one lot. Why would you do that? And of course, we recently had SB 79 passed, which is density around transit lines, which is one of the most obvious, of course you're supposed to do that things. And again, my fair mayor and my city council came out against it. How dare you make us build affordable housing around public transit? Because you're the ones who care about low-income families. What are you doing? It's bizarre, right? How do we get to this place? Well, I've talked about this. You got to look at Daniel Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Slow, which talks about the fact that a lot of our thinking is not based on rational, deductive logic, but it's just based on heuristics, right? It's quick, it's fast, it's efficient, but it's not skeptical. And then you got to go to The Righteous Mind by Jonathan Haidt, where he points out when it comes to particular social issues, care, harm, liberty, oppression, fairness, cheating, well, in these situations, our emotional type 1 thinking takes over. It sets off your emotional thinking, and it says, sit down, type 2 thinking. We want none of that logic in this place. Just think about debating your parents over anything, and this is it, right? And you have to throw in, of course, Max Fisher's The Chaos Machine, and in that book, he talks about how the internet has figured out that the best way of keeping you glued to your screen is to make you angry, to make you scared, or to addict you to a stupid game. And that is what they set out to do on a regular basis. Look, we don't think as much as we think. It's as simple as that, and we all have to internalize this. And yes, that's a whole bunch of people going up an escalator into a 24-hour fitness. So you got to beware the narrative, right? And I'm going to wrap up today by talking about two specific narratives that we've talked about, but we need to link together. One of those narratives, of course, is the positive value of Bitcoin. Clearly not economic reality, but a powerful part of our social thinking. You can see that in the $100,000 price. But of course, an economic reality that's not enough part of the narrative is a massive federal deficit. Look, the biggest problem we have in the United States right now is we are over-consuming. You can see that in the trade deficit. The trade deficit is not a function of unfair foreign trade policies. It is a function of the difference between what we as a nation produce and what we as a nation consume. As simple as that. We are now consuming $1 trillion more than we're producing. We're on a bender. We're not suffering, we're on a bender. Period. Right? And of course, why? Well, again, the government budget deficit. It's enormous. And to be clear, yes, economists have talked about this forever, but it is truly different this time because the Keynesian cycle has completely broken down. What's the Keynesian cycle? Well, you know, Nixon said years ago, we're all Keynesians now. And by the way, he didn't study any of Keynes' work, right? But what he meant is now we are required to intervene in the economy. That laissez-faire stuff is no longer acceptable in our new political reality. And that is what we do. When the unemployment rate goes up, deficits go up. When the unemployment rate goes down, the unemployment goes down. And that worked up and down until 2015. And in 2015, the wheels came off the train. That was, of course, the era of miserabilism, and MAGA, and the Tea Party, and the rise of Trump. And in that period of anger, suddenly deficits started increasing no matter what the hell happened. And of course, they blew off the chart in the middle of the pandemic, and even with it settling down, we keep going up and up and up. If you think about the one big beautiful bill, all this does is extend this trend. It maintains the tax cuts and adds a few more in. The trend will just continue. How big is it? If you wanted to close the deficit right now, you're talking $15,500 per household in additional taxes. And that doesn't even start to pay off the $38 trillion in federal debt. We don't have a 5% household savings rate. We have a negative 5% once you recognize that inherent government subsidy of our consumption. We don't have a household debt to GDP ratio of 70%. It's 190%. Because I have news for everybody in this room. The federal debt is your debt. It's my debt. You count that, it doesn't look nearly as good. You can see this spending binge. Here is where it connects. Who's paying for this? Why aren't interest rates going up if we're on this borrowing binge? And the answer is the rest of the world's paying for it. Oh, not willingly, but they are pouring money in the United States. I know it because the only thing you have to do is look at the capital account. In the last 4 quarters, in the last year, this nation has seen a net inflow of $1.6 trillion of hot money. $1.6 trillion. That's over 5% of GDP. The last time it was that high was back in 2006. Back then, they were buying asset-backed securities. This time, they're buying AI stocks. This time, they're buying cryptocurrency. Whatever it is, they're fueling our government borrowing binge, right? They buy a stock, that money goes in the bank turns around and buys a treasury. It is funding our national borrowing. Well, what happens when that bubble finally pops? It will pop. It must pop. Whatever goes up must come down. If it's too good to last, it won't. What happens? Well, we saw a preview of that earlier this year with the tariffs. Look, I wasn't worried about the tariffs. I told you that. But I sure as hell was worried about the worries about the tariff because it set off a panic and the market started to drop. And typically, if the stock market's dropping, homeowners, they get a little boost because the bond market rallies and interest rates come down. And that happened for 2 days, and then it stopped. The bond market started dropping. What's going on? The dollar's dropping. Well, there it is. The market started to drop, the dollar started to withdraw, and as a result of that, the dollar and the bond market fell. That's the holy trinity, people. When the stock market, the bond market, and the dollar all fall simultaneously, there's an economic condition. We use initials for it. It's FUCKED, okay? Now, that hasn't happened. Not because we pulled out, right? We got our confidence back. But it's going to happen eventually. Is it a year? Is it 2 years? It all depends on how long this AI crypto shenanigans can continue. And the way they're pumping it up, maybe a couple more years. I don't know. I do know that I feel very much like I did in 2005, where I'm like, this won't last. It's going to blow up. It's a matter of when, not if. How does it blow up? Well, look, okay, the bubble pops, money disappears, interest rates start to spike, we have to self-finance. Who does that put pressure on? Real estate, sure. Local government, sure. Business, sure. Not households. Households, most debt, 30-year fixed-rate mortgage. They don't care. But it's going to have the biggest impact on the federal government itself. $38 trillion of debt. 1 percentage point increase in the carrying cost is $400 billion a year more in spending. $400 billion. We have a $2.2 trillion deficit coming up, another $400 billion, another $400 billion. Next thing you know, you could see this thing cycling out of control dramatically, rapidly. At that point in time, something has to break. 3 things. They can default. That would be a worldwide financial catastrophe. They could do the right thing, which is cut spending and raise taxes, which in this political environment cannot happen. Or they rely, on course, on the Federal Reserve. Because remember, Jerome Powell is officially gone in May. Woohoo! Come on, hear it. Woo! No, really, he was the worst chairman since the 1970s, okay? I'm glad he's gone. Here's my fear. You know who gets to pick the next one? We're going to be followed up by the new worst chairman since the 1970s, who will inevitably use quantitative easing to, of course, fix the problems. And we know quantitative easing. Hey, don't worry. Ben Bernanke, Janet Yellen, Jerome Powell have all told us quantitative easing doesn't cause inflation. Now, of course it does. It's preposterous. How could you lie like that? And the answer is they lie like that because they care more about Fed independence than they do about telling the American people the truth. And that is a slippery slope. It is a very slippery slope. We saw that in the pandemic with Fauci and the nonsense he was pitching. You don't do that. And they did it, and now they paved the road to use quantitative easing to get our way out of this mess, which is monetizing the debt. This is what every government with too much debt and then inevitably does. They inflate their way out of it. And we're clearly heading there. Be prepared. Be prepared. What a weird world, people. Trump came into office. He inherited the healthiest set of American households ever. And everybody's pissed off and miserable. He also inherited one of the most out-of-whack economies in the world. Enormous government deficits, enormous trade deficits. The IMF and World Bank should be screaming at the top of their lungs, and the financial markets and currency markets are like, yeah, cool. What is going on? What a bizarre sense of narratives and reality. Economy's fine. Strong economic momentum. We're going to have another good year. You're going to sell wine, maybe not quite as much as you did before. But you're still going to wake up in the most beautiful place on the damn planet and appreciate that. But there is turbulence a-coming. 1 year, 2 year, 3 year. Watch the dollar, watch the bond market, watch those inflows of capital. When the party's up, it's going to start getting really hairy, really interesting, really quick. As for our fair state, we continue to be focused on the wrong issues, proving that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. It's housing supply, not affordability. It's labor supply, not income inequality. Please focus on what this state actually needs, as opposed to chasing your political whatever, will-o-wisp down into the swamps, as we're constantly doing. But of course, that depends on us fixing the narrative. Look, don't blame the papers. Don't blame the politicians. They sell narratives for a living. You don't have the right narrative, you don't get elected. You don't sell the paper. They are creatures of what we want to hear. If we want to change them, we have to change what we want to hear. And that means taking a good, long, hard look in the mirror and acknowledging that maybe you don't think quite as much as you think. I know that's hard to do, but at some point in time, we all have to do it. And yeah, that's economists too. I'm not pretending I'm different than everyone else. After all, it is easier to fool people than convince them they have been fooled. And as I pointed out, Mark Twain never actually said that. But you know, it still sounds good. Thank you very much, everybody. As always, so great to be here.
Wow. I never knew I could be both offended and encouraged and optimistic and totally scared, all in the same talk. Thank you. All right, folks, last chance to submit questions. And while you do that, we are going to hear from another sponsor, this one from KSBY.
Good morning, Central Coast business and community leaders. I'm Richard Gearhart with KSBY News. KSBY isn't just a television station, we're your neighbors, dedicated to serving every community up and down the Central Coast. We focus on the stories and issues that impact the lives of people who get to call this beautiful place their home. What sets us apart is our commitment to hyperlocal journalism. Our reporters are embedded in communities throughout the Central Coast, with dedicated beats across San Luis Obispo and Santa Barbara counties. They don't just visit these communities, they live and work alongside the people they serve. This system allows us to dig deeper into the stories and topics that matter most to you, whether it's explaining how state policies affect small businesses or how a new housing development impacts your neighborhood. We also celebrate the entrepreneurs, nonprofits, and everyday heroes who drive our local economy forward. Because when you have reporters who understand their communities, they can let you know not only what's going on, but why it matters. These meaningful connections help us serve both our viewers and our business partners with the depth and insight that you deserve. That's why KSBY is proud to continue our partnership with the Central Coast Economic Forecast. Because understanding our economy means understanding our community.
All right, let's hear it for KSBY. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, you've heard from a lot of people today. We want to hear from you. This is the part of the program where you get to express your opinion. So you can take out the little red and green cards. We're just going to do a quick straw poll of the room. Let's see. The first question I would like to ask, raise your green card if you think AI is utopia, and your red if you think it's more dystopia. Okay. Mostly red. Yeah, okay, all right. All right, let's talk about, you heard some scary stuff about the stock market, about a potential recession. Green if you think the stock market has more room to run. Red if you think we are on the brink of a pullback. Oh, it's mixed. Okay, more mixed than I thought. How about the recession? Is it right? Well, is it right around the corner? Are we due for a recession? Raise your red card if we're looking at economic contraction this year. Green card if you think we're going to keep going. Oh, it's an optimistic crowd. Beautiful. Okay, the big question. When will the government shutdown end? Optimists in the room think it's this week with the green card. Red if you think it's going to be longer. Yeah, definitely longer. Okay. All right, folks. Before we get into questions, we have a $5,000 check to hand to someone. That's right, that we are ready to announce the winners of 3 Minutes to Win It. Would Donica please come to the stage? You can do the honors.
Can we give one more round of applause for our 3 founders that presented today? You all did a great job, but there is one winner, and that winner is Everest Medical.
Very well deserved. Congratulations. All of the businesses this year were just fantastic and amazing. All right, well, I've been receiving and looking over your questions throughout the program. I'm excited to get to some kind of heavy-hitting questions here in the time that we have remaining. And I apologize if we don't get to your question, but we have limited time. But you both presented a lot of data around immigration. That was a key topic. And so, Niree, you talked about immigration in and out of SLO County. We talked about labor force. We talked about people moving, perhaps for economic reasons. We also talked about immigration in the sense of foreigners immigrating to the U.S. So let's just spend a little time on immigration. We'll start with you, Niree, locally. We looked at income to housing costs, and can you dissect that data a little for us? Was it inflation adjusted? Are people leaving SLO because they can't afford? What are some of the things happening behind the data that you presented?
Yeah, sure. I actually have a couple of new slides to go along with it because I saw the questions as they were coming in. Our senior research associate at Beacon was pulling and analyzing the data, helping me put these together. So let's look at first this household income versus CPI growth. Since I did show you nominal incomes, I did want you to see that they have been rising in real terms. So there's the CPI growth, which is a measure of inflation, and the growth in incomes for SLO in California. So yes, there has been growth in incomes in real terms. Looking at migration levels, so if we can go to one of the other slides. Actually, sorry, the next one. Okay, so there was more positive domestic migration into SLO pre-pandemic. So the graph on the left is showing you what happened between 2011 and 2019. So this is not all migration, but domestic migration. And it was net positive. So there were more people coming into the county than there were people leaving the county. But that seems to have changed actually starting in 2019, but has continued post-pandemic. So it's reversed. Now there seems to be more people leaving the county than there are people coming in, which is, of course, one of the reasons population has dropped back to 2015 levels. And now going back one more slide to the previous one. So this is migration by income level, because the question is, okay, if we have people leaving and people coming in, and obviously that's changing pre and post-pandemic, but incomes are overall rising both in nominal and real terms, what can we attribute that to? Is it the types of people coming in? Are there, is it wealthier people coming in and less affluent people are leaving? So this is data from 2023 American Community Survey, which is a survey done by the census. And we don't have 2024 because of the government shutdown. So that was supposed to be released in October. But anyway, what we're seeing is that for people coming into the county, it is 23% super affluent, so income 250,000 and over. And then we have 21% under 25,000, so those are probably students.
College students.
Yeah, college,
that's
exactly.
Cal Poly SLO.
Cal Poly students. And then for outbound migration, it's the highest categories are about 18 and 17%. That's in the 50 to 75K range and 150 to 200K range. So yes, on average, at least in 2023, it does seem to be the case that wealthier people are moving in. Yeah.
And that's not a surprise at some level. Again, go back to the idea of the difference filtering versus gentrification, right? If you don't build enough housing and rich people want to live here, they're going to push somebody else out. And that's exactly what you're seeing, right? It's just that process. And we don't like to see our neighbors have to leave because they can't afford the home prices anymore. But again, the answer to that is to build enough housing for people who want to move here, but still allows people to stay here. And that means building more housing than you're doing right now. And that, of course, is a choice the community has to make.
So we have a couple more questions like on that line. One person said, well, if we build more housing, won't that just invite more people from out of town to come in and gobble those up? One person mentioned, well, won't that just increase the number of second homes and vacation homes that people have? I'm hearing you say like
all the
more.
Above.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, it will.
Yeah,
but
if you don't build, it's going to happen anyway.
Right, it's going to happen in the existing
supply. It's going to be even worse. I mean, you're not going to stop people from coming here by not building homes. Yeah. It's not going to happen. Okay, you're not. Thus, the idea that you could stand against change, you could push back against change and keep things the way they were, that world doesn't exist. No matter what the boomers think, that will never actually happen. And we have to start embracing change. We just have to start leaning in and accepting change. And by the way, when you do that, you can control change. Look, you have to accept growth. You have to accept change. But if you accept it and you moderate it and you manipulate it, you can still keep all the wonders that this county offers. But pushing back against is not solving anything. It's making the problem worse, not better.
Okay. Chris, can you comment on the scarcity of labor in the U.S.? So you mentioned it's essential. I'm aware of the fact that GDP basically includes productivity. Productivity is labor. That's obvious. It's just a math thing.
Yeah.
So is the issue that we are not educating our homegrown generation, or is the issue that we're just not having enough babies?
We're just not having not enough babies. Not enough babies. You look at the data, right? Birth rates collapsed 25, 30 years ago. Simple as that. And now we're we're growing older as a nation. A lot more folks are way beyond that stage of life, and as a result of that, this baby shortage is an issue. And it's not just here. I mean, most of the developed world has this particular issue. And some embrace immigration. Their world changes a bit, but their economies are able to grow. This is just the natural offset, simple as that. And you know, what's interesting also about this whole thing is the idea that we are both slapping tariffs on our trading partners, particularly when Canada and Mexico, which, by the way, do have a lot of babies, right? I mean, Mexico has tons of babies. Canada has lots of immigrants. So their labor forces are growing much more rapidly than ours. So it's so bizarre to like both try to push people out of this nation, even as we try to push Canada and Mexico out of our trading systems. It's just completely contradictory. Make one decision or another. If you want to bring jobs back, you have to have workers here. It's as simple as that. So really odd situation.
Indeed. So let's just spend a little bit more time on AI because, you know, I know you gave it some airtime in your slides, but it is such a powerful narrative. You know, the narrative is that unemployment is increasing, people are being laid off because of AI, that it's only going to get worse. We're all going to be on universal basic income in a couple of years. So speak some truth, maybe help calm our fears a little bit more, but let's dive into, I think, what is a reasonable expectation for this AI boom. I mean, there's so much money going into just infrastructure alone, right?
Absolutely, it's huge.
Yeah.
Okay, so a couple things. First of all, yeah, I know there's been some stories about the Challenger numbers. It's one of the few employment numbers we're getting. The Challenger layoffs at 150,000 or something like that, which is not even that big of a number, as the case may be. I'm not exactly sure what to make of it, but I go back to what I said. The unemployment rate is still a hair above 4%. There's still lots of job openings. To me, this does not feel like an economy that's being wiped out by AI by any stretch of the imagination. Now, again, as I said, AI is a formative technology. It is clearly going to change how work is done, like the internet did, like the first microcomputers did, like the electrification of the grid did, like the creation of these massive railroad networks did. Technological change, these big waves of technological change, is not unusual in our country over time. It's part of what happens. We have these surges of new technologies, they change things, and on the back end of it, we have just as many jobs. We have a full employment economy. Because push aside all that Luddite panic that somehow or other the computers are going to take all our jobs. It's not. As powerful as AI is, it's still text-based. You still got to be staring at a screen. And haven't we recognized by this point in time that we are not screen-based creatures? We're never going to be happy in a world with two-dimensional I know I hear about Gen Z and their AI girlfriends and boyfriends. I don't know about that stuff. I know. Hopefully that's just ridiculous survey stuff. But for the most part, the vast majority of things we want, we need, we appreciate in the world around us is three-dimensional. And it's a long ways from becoming anything like three-dimensional. So, you know, look, if they do all the hard stuff, we'll all just go out and be therapists and take care of each other's mental states, all right?
There you go.
It'll be fine.
There's AI for that.
Yeah, oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
But something to just add on there, there's I guess, or just to describe it differently, because this is not just something typical for the United States. Anytime there is new technology, what we call it in economics is creative destruction. So some jobs are going to be lost, but other jobs are going to be created. So there's never been a technology where there's been mass like unemployment in the long term following it. There's going to be some unemployment, there's going to be some reallocation of resources, but in the long term, there should be more jobs that are created than destroyed.
Okay. That's encouraging. Niree, are we seeing AI investment money show up in SLO? Is that hitting the charts yet, or is it mostly happening in Arizona data centers and so forth?
I haven't looked at that specifically.
Okay. Excellent. Well, I think you guys covered a lot of the questions through your presentations, so I feel like we put a nice bow on everything. I want to thank you both for challenging our narratives. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, folks. We have one more message from a very esteemed sponsor. Let's take a look at the screens one more time, and I've got some parting remarks for you.
Hi, I'm Kristen Polera, Director of Sales at Peregrine Hospitality. I was born and raised on the Central Coast, and it's been incredible to watch this region grow while still preserving the character that makes it so special. That's why I'm proud to work for an organization deeply connected to this community. Peregrine Hospitality operates a collection of boutique hotels across Paso Robles, Pismo Beach, and Avila Beach. Together, our properties employ more than 400 local team members, and we partner with dozens of small businesses, wineries, and local makers throughout the region. Every guest who stays with us helps support local jobs, local products, and the Central Coast economy. At Peregrine, we believe hospitality is about more than just welcoming guests. It's about strengthening the community we're a part of. We're honored to sponsor the Central Coast Economic Forecast and to help build a bright future for this incredible place we call home.
Thank you, Peregrine. Well, folks, join me once again in giving a round of applause for our presenters, Dr. Chris Thornberg, Dr. Niree Kodaverdian from Beacon Economics. So grateful. Congratulations to our Cal Poly students for the amazing work they are doing. Thank you, Reach, for the work you are doing. You all have been amazingly patient with the technical difficulties, and I wanted you to give yourself a round of applause. Thank you very much. No tomatoes were thrown. No one yelled. That was beautiful. Hey, on the way out, there's going to be traffic. It's all good. We're not used to it living here on the Central Coast. But it is going to be a little slow. I want you to enjoy yourself, mingle a little bit, give time for people to leave. Okay, let's all stay calm. Maybe turn on a podcast. We did get Caltrans to extend the green light at the intersection, so that should help. And remember, you can use 2 lanes to turn left onto Madonna. There's the 2 left lanes are left turn lanes onto Madonna. Okay, that's all I have for you. Thank you so much for coming to the 2025 Central Coast Economic Forecast.